huge thanks to OK Jazzy. They're your go-to for the 2026 World Cup and an incredible retro archive. They've got decades of iconic league classics, from legendary 90s designs to the rarest club heritage kits. Whether it's a high-performance player version or a timeless vintage look, prices start at just £15, 4.5 Trustpilot rating and fast shipping. Use code Chris for 8% off and grab your piece of football history now.
Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another edition of the weekly Tottenham transfer news show. There is just over 24 hours left of this summer transfer window. Of course, Spurs got a number of deals done early. We have got 8 deals over the line so far, and Spurs are actively trying to get more deals done. A fair few have left, some on a permanent deal, some on loan. Will there be any more? Let's wait and see. A lot of change again at Tottenham Hotspur Football Club under new boss Roberto De Zerbi. Now, my name is Chris Cowlin, and this evening we'll be joined by Josh Hughes and also Gareth McGuinness. Please do get involved. Let us know how you are feeling right now about Tottenham Hotspur and the transfer window. Gareth, good evening to you.
Good evening, Chris. The last Monday of these transfer shows. And I have to say, when I was thinking about my day yesterday for today, I was really looking forward to the podcast because I thought we were going to be on here talking about Njai being a Tottenham player. Obviously, that's completely backfired now. He's going to Man City. And if things weren't bad enough already, it looks like we've already got an alternative in mind. And with that player being Mudryk from Chelsea, who hasn't really been active due to being banned from football. Also plays for a rival in Chelsea who paid a lot of money for him. It hasn't worked out at Chelsea, not even in the time that he was available to play. He's been very, very poor. He does have a very similar playing style to Timo Werner. He's very quick, but he doesn't really produce anything. De Zerbi's got a connection with the player there. Maybe that's why we've looked at doing this. And then obviously there's another Chelsea player in Tosan being linked. So look, Chris,
we'll get into it.
I'm not happy. It's been a difficult Monday evening so far.
Yeah, I can tell. I only said hello, and you can't wait to get in to talk about all these players and rumours and reports. Also back with us is Josh Hughes. Josh, how are you this evening?
Yeah, same as Gareth. Completely stunned, to be honest. I genuinely, of all the players in world football, I would never, ever have guessed Mudryk and Tosin would be 2 to come in. But, are we surprised, I think, at what's happened with Iliman and Njai? No. I think we all had, in our own group chat and with every Spurs fan I've spoken to, I think there's been this sort of sense of paranoia about this deal. So many moving parts, and I was having a conversation with a few Liverpool fans, and I said, why would you let Gakpo go the way he started the season? He obviously scored a good goal at Newcastle, fantastic assist for Isak at the weekend as well. And obviously Liverpool have pulled the plug on that deal. And when I saw that Gakpo to City, was off, I knew it was curtains for Njai. It was so obvious. I'm glad it's not Arsenal or Chelsea signing Njai, but for us to then move so quickly on to Tosin and Mykhailo Mudryk, I want to say it was premeditated, and that would concern me a lot more if it was premeditated, because how anyone thinks that those two are going to improve the squad, no idea. But it just seems so chaotic. How excited, this is to both of you, how excited were we at the start of the window? How strong we started,
Yep.
Really, really good players coming in. Of course, these players have to prove themselves, and we've not seen the best of them yet. But for the way we started the window to how it seems to be finishing, just utter chaos. And I think quite rightly, fans want to know what on earth is going on and why we have been in this situation. We knew we needed a left winger. all summer, and now we're ending up with what feels like a complete panic loan for Mykhailo Mudryk. And for me, Mudryk and De Zerbi's past, relationship at Shakhtar Donetsk is, for me, nowhere near a good enough reason to justify us bringing him to the club, especially having not played for 2 years with this ban. So yeah, I mean, I think we're all left scratching our heads, really, completely baffled by what's unfolding.
Before we get into talking about each player, give me a very quick answer, Gareth. Let's start with you. Give me a quick number here. What rating would you give the transfer window at the moment with the 8 signings that Spurs have got over the line?
6.
Is that harsh, Josh?
Do you know what?
Justify my reasons after Josh gives his answer, but I'll give you my reasons why I would only give it a 6.
I want to guess your reasons, Gareth, because I think, am I right in thinking that the reason why you're saying this is because obviously the end of the window has been really disappointing, but also on the evidence of what we have currently seen from these new signings, it's not been great as well. And I think that's the other thing that I wonder as to your score, but also,
I think there's more questions and answers about some of that. You look at it defensively. Can you say for sure that Van Hecke is better than Romero? Is Andy Robertson going to be a better player than Jed Spence? Certain situations like that. Midfield, I don't think you can argue that Tonali and Fernandes are massive upgrades, but left wing now looks a real concern. I didn't think we would finish the window with Matisse Tell and Mudryk, on that left side. I know Savio can go possibly over there and play there, but this wasn't the plan. And it looks like we haven't signed an out-and-out number 9. Marmoush can play there, but for me, and the evidence was there on Saturday, whilst he is a very talented player, I do not think he's an out-and-out number 9. He can play in that position, but he's not a number 9. So again, we failed to address a huge area, and also as well, based on what I've seen in the first 2 games, I want to give him more time. But Kianski, for me, is he going to be a good enough number 1 for this team this season? I'm not sure. So I can't give it any more than a 6. Based on the money we've spent, I don't think we've got complete value for money in terms of all the areas of the squad needed addressed. Very happy with the centre midfield area. The rest of it's all questionable.
It seems crazy, Josh, doesn't it, with that rating, because we've broken our transfer record fee twice in this window with Matheus Fernandes, 85 million, and Sandro Tonali, £100 million package. It's crazy, isn't it? Because you think that Spurs have gone out, shown real ambition. The board, the owners, they want to see a very different Tottenham going forward, and this is a very ambitious Tottenham. Of course, as you've both alluded to, it hasn't been a great start in the Premier League. 2 defeats out of 2. De Zerbi's come out and said, a number of times now, we are not ready. Wait until we're a team, and I've got no doubt that we are going to be a decent side this season. But I do think it's going to take a little bit of time. But talking about the transfer window, and I know you were saying about the end of the window. It does end tomorrow. 11 p.m. So there is just over 24 hours to go. So let's see what happens. But are you pleased overall with the signings that we've had in?
Is this to me or to Gareth?
Yeah, you, Josh.
Yeah. Look, Gareth, I think your rating's a little bit harsh, which is amazing coming from me. I mean, how the tables have turned. I think this is an 8 out of 10 window. I think there are glaring holes still there. I think there are big question marks at the end of this window, namely the right back position, selling Jed Spence and not bringing in a replacement. No matter what anyone tells me, I will never be convinced that Archie Gray is a right back. He's just not. And we seem far more sort of adept to play 3 at the back, really, with the players we have at our disposal currently. Also, I'm not convinced with our 2 strikers. And I'm not convinced with the left wing option either, unless Marmoush is going to take up that role. And I think Marmoush could take up that role. I've been trying to, there was, when I was on holiday last week, I was on the comments of the show post Charlton. And I said, I think Marmoush is not a striker. I think we should be looking at potentially him playing left wing. And that's because he's got 5 goals in 11 Premier League games playing there. And then the evidence was proven, I think, against Newcastle. He really struggled up on his own. He needed someone else with him. So unless that maybe fills a gap, there are still question marks there. And we seem to really lack a focal point against Newcastle. So that's still to be addressed. However, on the flip side, we've spent record levels of money. We've broken our transfer record twice. We've gone out and done something that I think at the start of the window, if we didn't know about Mudryk and Tosin, we would have said this is a great transfer window. And I think we need to just temper our expectations a little bit. I want us to get back into the Champions League as much as anyone else does. But for us to expect, after finishing 17th twice, and the failure to strengthen the squad properly after the Europa League win, to expect us to automatically... What do people expect? Do they expect us to just be title challengers straight away? Because, you know, this is going to, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, and we're all sick of rebuilds. We're all sick of the process starting again and blank canvas and start from scratch and everything else. We're all sick of it, but it's not going to be achieved in one transfer window. It's not going to be achieved in this window or January window. It's going to take a couple of seasons before we have that balance right. And we've changed so many players. I mean, Mudryk and Tosin are going to make it 10 new players in the squad. And one of the big problems we've had is getting rid of players. And Papsar has landed in Turin ahead of his move to Juventus. Vicario's gone. Spencer's gone. Romero's gone. So many players have gone. And we really were struggling to get players out the door previously. So that's something different that's been a positive. Of course, we can ask questions about Will Lancashire, especially now that he started off at Borough with 4 goals in just 3 games, and he looks absolutely fantastic. Yeah. But that doesn't automatically translate as he would be ready in the Premier League right now, and he would deliver those numbers in the Premier League. Mikey Moore, I think, is a curious one as well, because we knew obviously that Cowlin deal was happening, but having impressed so much against Charlton and started the game at Brentford, I just thought maybe he would have had a chance to stick around and we would have sanctioned that deal only if we'd got Njai over the line. And without that, I do think I would rather Mikey Moore to Mykhailo Mudryk, that's for sure. But yeah, I think overall, we can't really complain too much in terms of how the window has gone. Of course, it's massively disappointing that we're going to miss out on Iliman Njai, but I would have rather seen that level of money. You know, we're talking about £60 million here. I would rather see Spurs seeing who they can get for that kind of money on deadline day, rather than just panicking into this double deal of Chelsea rejects, because, yeah, I think that does sit uncomfortably. So it's going to take time, but, you know, I do believe, like you said, Chris, that we will turn things around, but that needs to start with De Zerbi actually knowing what his best team is, players all settling and getting to know each other and kind of building that relationship out on the pitch. I don't expect us to start really clicking into gear until probably the second half of the season, to be perfectly honest.
Josh, I'll come back to you in a minute with the Richarlison comments that you posted on Instagram. I don't know whether you want to get that up and ready. Gareth, I just want to go to a comment here. I was going to go to talk about Iliman Njai, but we'll talk first of all about this comment. Negative mentality. The fans moan about the players brought in. Now, we've had a few comments this week saying that you're negative about the transfer window. What is realistic in this transfer window? Because, you know, as Josh said there, we've spent hundreds of millions of pounds. We've been bantered by a number of opposition fans, the media, that Spurs have lost the opening 2 Premier League games. But Roberto De Zerbi, again, this is yet another manager. How many managers have we known at this football club, you know, particularly since Pochettino, 2019, up until now? From Pochettino to Roberto De Zerbi, 7 permanent managers in 7 years and 5 interim appointments. You know, this club has gone round in circles. So this is meant to be a very positive window. No matter what happens in the window now, in the next 24 hours, I expect the football club are very happy with the business that they've done. So where do you sit on being pleased as a Spurs fan?
Well, listen, maybe I'm a bit upset because I really wanted Iliman and Jai. I was a player that I've said all summer that I thought would be a brilliant addition to the squad, and I think
Yep.
that they have him snatched away, and it's obviously still very fresh. That's playing on my mind at the moment, and the fact that it's come out within the space of an hour after that Mudryk's the next option, I think that's just double down on negativity. But I wasn't convinced with the Savio and the Cody Gapco top targets. I wasn't overly convinced that those two were the best available out there. I've watched Savio quite a lot at Man City. Didn't really think he would suit the Premier League. Now, in that Charlton game, he looked incredible. So I'm prepared to give him, I really hope I'm wrong about that. And I really want him to work out. Cody Gapco, just from watching him at Liverpool, I just thought that for 80 to 85 million, we were going to get a player that was possibly already played his best football. Liverpool fans say that he's very much a one-track pony, and a lot of wild shots flying over crossbars. And look, at the end of the day, whatever way you look at Liverpool, they were happy to sell him if they could get a replacement. So they were more than happy to let him go. So I just thought Njai would be a better alternative to Cody Gapco. So when that all came out, I was looking forward to that. Looking forward to that kind of front three or four. The Marmoush one I was excited about, but the fact that he's now going to be asked to play as a striker, I think, concerns me. I don't know if he's capable of playing as a number 9 week in, week out. He's a very talented player, and I'm happy we've got him. And then just with Josh defensively, I'm just not convinced with his team. It's big question marks around some of these players that have come in, and letting Jed Spence go, we know replacement, could be seen as unforgivable in a few weeks' time, to be honest. The goalkeeping situation, whilst Vicario wasn't good enough, and I'm not silly enough to know Romero had to leave. I'm not saying that I wanted Romero to stay, but I'm just not convinced that the players we've signed are better than him at this moment in time. So there is question marks around some of these signings, Chris. So I'm not going to sit here and say this is 8 9s out of 10 because I am not convinced. Even if we had won those first 2 games, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd still be looking at it thinking I'm not sure on some of these. I'm banking on Tonali and Fernandez coming good. I think we've seen a wee bit of Fernandez so far. Tonali, it's not worked out in these first 2 games, but I know there's a player there. I've seen it at Newcastle. I really hope with Savio we see a different player that we've seen at Man City. But yeah. I'm just worried, Chris, that we could be in a situation where we've got Tell and Mudryk on the left side, because Savio and Kudos, for me, are going to be looking to play off the right-hand side. So you can only play one of them. So you're going to have to maybe start putting square pegs in the round holes. And when Savio was playing off the left at Man City, it wasn't working. It was not working for him. So I just have a question mark around how we're going to fit these players in. And then are we going to have one of Kudos or Savio sitting out to accommodate Mudryk now? I am a bit concerned. And as Josh said, the fact that we've just completely went in now for Mudryk tells me that after Njai and Cody Gapco, there was no other alternative. Because why would you not be still exploring the market for an opportunity? We're hearing that there's agents out there trying to do deals, but it seems to be now that we've no other alternatives, and that's why they're getting Mudryk in. Because I can't think for the life of me why we'd be going down this route other than this connection that De Zerbi had with him. But he's had connections with loads of players. He's managed loads of different teams. I just think it's doable because he can get him on the cheap. Chelsea want a shot of him. And he's a similar profile of player to what we were looking at in terms of he's got real piss. But in terms of quality, in terms of Premier League proven ability, we haven't seen it with Mudryk. And the fact that he's been out for so long, I think this is a crazy gamble on a player. And you only have to look at the fan reaction, Christy. Timo Werner, Kolo Muani, and it's a similar reaction with this player. And both of those didn't work out either. And when we see these players going basically on a loan at the very end of the window because they're deemed surplus to requirements, it begs the question why Spurs are taking Chelsea scraps or PSG scraps. The whole we have one, doesn't matter. We've all said about Daniel Levy in the past, but it seems to be every window we're capable of this. At the very end of the window, pulling out a player that nobody else wants, and then we expect them a manager to try and coach them into some sort of form, when we know deep down, if Mudryk has one bad game, the fans are going to be on his back right away, and it's going to be very difficult for him to get any sort of confidence, because the stadium, and listen, we've seen this already, Chris, results haven't been good enough. Already lost one game now at the stadium this year. So there's added pressure on these players they work out. And listen, that's maybe unfortunate. But the likes of Tonali and Fernandes, because the fan base are behind those signings, they're going to get time. Mudryk has one bad game and the fans are going to be calling it out. And, nobody wants him. So I just can't understand this.
I've got to say, I like to be positive about Spurs, but it does have Timo Werner vibes all over it. And the fact that I always say, whenever you go into a transfer window and a transfer window closes, you've got to have brought in better players, upgrades. And you talk about the midfield there, you two, about Matheus Fernandes and Tonali. They are massive upgrades. So is Mudryk an upgrade? We'll talk about him shortly. Josh, we'll bring you in a second, because I'll come on to Richarlison in a minute. Gareth, first of all, Cody Gakpo, you and I have spoken at length about Gakpo, and I said that I'd be surprised if Liverpool did let him go in this transfer window, and then Manchester City were interested. Well, the deal's now off. He's staying at Liverpool. He's had a great start to the Premier League campaign, by the way. Now, in the last couple of days, Fabrizio Romano stated Ndiaye has given the green light to Tottenham, contact proposal, ready to join Spurs under the project under Roberto De Zerbi. The agreement now depends on Richarlison to accept Everton move, as Tottenham Hotspur Football Club are ready to close the double deal. And then Fabrizio Romano today has stated Manchester City have agreed a deal to sign Iliman Ndiaye from Everton. Here we go, club-to-club agreement in place and green light for medical tests. Fee worth £65 million package. Personal terms also in place. And in the last hour or so, BBC Sports have stated that Tottenham actually abandoned this deal because Richarlison failed to agree personal terms with Everton. Gareth, what do you make of the whole situation? Because why couldn't they have got this Ndiaye deal done separately very quickly? And then, because from what we understand, from what Fabrizio Romano said as well, they were two separate deals. So why was it so, why did it matter about the Richarlison one?
Well, look, as angry as I am with Ndiaye, I think realistically, when the Cody Gakpo thing fell through, we were in banging trouble, as Josh spoke about. The player got word that Man City were going to come back in, and Richarlison had have agreed to go there now, I don't think the deal would have happened. But the bigger question is, why have we waited so long to bring this player in? Why could we not have done this last month? This player has been available. Man City made it pretty clear in the last week that Cody Gakpo was their main man. Why did we not get this done? Why did we not have this done last week? That's what I can't understand. Chris, we started this transfer show back in June, and we were ranting and raving about how good the window was in June. After June was over, we never done anything for 2 months nearly. Until Savio come on. We were sitting here every week, and it was just the same news. We seemed to have a break in the middle of the transfer window. We didn't do anything in July. Yes, I know there's pre-season going on, but it was pretty clear that we wanted Savio. We wanted a left winger. Well, it was Gakpo or it was Ndiaye. Why were we waiting around? And this is the problem that we have.
Gareth, I know this is probably going to have a mixed opinion, because I can see already in the chat that it's a mixed opinion. Some people are very happy with the window. Some people think that you're being grumpy and you're a bit ungrateful. But if I'd have said to you at the start of the window, we would have signed 8 players, or it might even be more by tomorrow's deadline. It might be 10 or 11. But if I'd have said to you 8 players in and we would have broken our transfer record twice, you'd have taken that, wouldn't you?
Of course. I'm not going to say, in hindsight, of course, we've had worse windows. But I just think with how it started to how it's finished now, I think it's just made positivity on its waned. And I do think that there was so much time wasted on Savio, trying to get that deal done. That should have been done a long time ago. And this left wide player that we knew we wanted should have been done. So I think when you it's okay for Man City, Chris, because Man City don't have a lot of competition. Spurs have to realise if all our targets fall through, and Arsenal and Man City come in at the minute, the players, it doesn't matter what he's told you or agreed to. It's a team like Spurs. If Arsenal or Man City come in at the last minute, they're going to swerve. So this is why it's important to get deals done when you're a club like Tottenham trying to build and trying to get up to compete with these teams. We've seen this 2 years in a row now. Eze was another one where we faffed about all summer, and then Arsenal didn't get a player, and then ended up changing and going for Eze. So we're always in this situation now where we've had enough lessons where we've left it to the last minute. That's what I'm saying. We only agreed this deal on Sunday, as David Ornstein exclusive. He revealed it on Sunday that we have agreed this deal, but because Cody Gapco's fallen through, within 24 hours, it's all changed. Whereas if we had got Njai done last week, we wouldn't be in this situation. So I think the club have to take a lot of responsibility. And as you say, why has this deal seemingly evolved around Richarlison? When Man City went down, just paid 65 million and got the deal done. We could have done the same. So it seems to me like one big mess. And the manager as well, Chris. I don't, Richarlison's made a public statement. I know Josh is going to speak about it, but not everybody's been truthful, because it seems to me from reading that statement that Richarlison hasn't asked to leave the club. So I'll let Josh come on it, but the manager needs to be very careful what he says in the media. He's already says about Bombas and nothing happened for weeks, and now he says about this, and this Richarlison thing has blew up in the club's face, and now they double down and bring in Mudryk. It's just going to infuriate the fans even more.
Josh, after Saturday's 2-0 home defeat against Newcastle, talking about why there was no Richarlison, Sarr or Danso in the squad, he said, Richarlison, I don't know. He has said too many times he wants to leave. Danso come to me 2 days ago and says he wants to leave, and Paco Matar the same. Josh, if you've got the statement there that Richarlison put out earlier, would you mind reading that out and then give us your opinion on what you think has happened here? Would you like to see Richarlison stay? Would you like to see him leave? Does he need to be replaced? Do you blame Richarlison for the Njai deal falling through? Because as I said, it should have been two separate deals. So I don't see what the issue was there. If he doesn't want to go to Everton, that's fair enough. And there are a lot of other reports at the moment stating that there is a lot of interest from Turkey and other European clubs as well in the Brazilian striker.
Yeah, so look, I'll read the statement first and then I'll get into it. But I think a lot of our fan base have this situation completely wrong. I think that Richarlison is getting a lot of unfair criticism in this situation. And I think actually eyes should be on Roberto De Zerbi and the club. But I'll read the statement first. After everything I've been through in recent years, I decided that they would never again decide my future for me. I've been through a lot of bad things these days, and almost all of them happen because of decisions made by other people. Pressure, threats, relations. None of this scares me. I've been through worse things, believe me. I've always made it clear that at every opportunity that an exit of mine to another place would also have to be good for the club. If it wasn't, I would never accept, as I didn't accept when everything here was falling apart and they needed me, in reference to us being in 17th in relegation fights. I stayed and gave my life. So I hope you treat my situation with the same respect that I always had for Spurs and for all the people who worked with me during this period. Just don't want to decide for me. If they enter into an agreement between Spurs and Everton, I go back to my favourite team. My intention was not to return to my intention was to return to the place where I was very happy, but the negotiations were the way people wanted, and it won't be like this anymore. Despite this riot, I have a contract with Spurs and I will be at the club's disposal. So, look, firstly, there's an element of this that we have to take with a pinch of salt, in that there are parts of this statement that are lost in translation. Phrases that in Portuguese make sense, but in English don't make grammatical sense. So we have to kind of pick out from that. But my understanding of this situation is that Richarlison never asked to leave the club. I was told by a couple of people now that I trust quite closely that Richarlison said that he was prepared to leave the club, provided, the club wanted him gone. If the club wanted him gone, if he wasn't part of De Zerbi's plans, then he would willingly go. And that seems to have been conflated into Richarlison asking to leave the club. Richarlison has been a loyal Spurs player. He's never really kicked up a stink before in terms of transfer stuff. And of course, I think where a lot of the fan base here are getting mixed up is the fact that I think a lot of us, me included, think his time is up at the club and would like to see him move on. But that does not mean that he is necessarily asked to leave the club. And clearly in this statement, he's very, very angry that it has been made out that this is the case. And of course, this isn't the only time he's taken to social media over the last few days. He did another statement, a very, very telling sort of image, basically calling out lies about him and misinformation about his situation. Now, with Everton, clearly what's happened here, it seems to be the case that the contract offer was not good enough for him, or not something he was prepared to accept. And it sounds a lot like the club was trying to force him to complete this transfer and quickly, so that they could get this Iliman and Jai deal over the line. Now, this seems quite confusing because we're being told that these are two separate transfers, but clearly Spurs are looking at the balance sheets, and they're looking at the finances of this to try and get maybe another player over the line, or what have you, or the books in terms of financial fair play, who knows. But Richarlison, I think what he's done clearly here is say, actually, hang on a minute, if you want me to go, that's fine, but I get to decide where I go. You don't get to force me to make a transfer. You don't get to force my next decision. If you're trying to force me out the door, which is clearly what's going on here, I think it's very obvious reading between the lines, because what has Richarlison got to gain?
I don't know about that, Josh, because De Zerbi has said twice now, from what I recall, in different press conferences, where he said sometimes Richarlison says he wants to stay, and sometimes he says he wants to go. Now, if I was Roberto De Zerbi, I'd fully get it, because you want everyone to be with you. When you're trying to start a fresh, brand new project, and get Tottenham, going places, you want people to be absolutely 100% committed. So if you get a player say to you, I want out, Kevin Danso, Romero, Sarr, etc., there's no problem or issues with these players leaving. You've got to have players on board and want to go forward with you and have that ambition.
Yeah, sure. And that does make sense. But from what I understand, what Richarlison has actually been saying, apparently, is that if he's not part of the plans, then he wants to go. Not that he actually actively is pushing for a transfer.
Yeah.
If I'm not part of your plans, if you do not see me as being a starter or a key part of your squad, then I don't want to sit here and twiddle my thumbs. I've got a career to think about. And clearly what's gone on there is there's some sort of miscommunication between Richarlison and Roberto De Zerbi. That is, I think we can definitely take that as a definite from all of this. I don't think Richarlison's got anything to gain from coming out and making these statements unless he's very angry. And he has said in this statement that he is contracted to Tottenham and he wants to play for Tottenham, and he is at their disposal because he plays for the club under contract, which is not the kind of language you would hear from someone who was desperately trying to force a move. They wouldn't say, I'm under contract and I'm at your disposal. They would say they would go on strike or something like that. So clearly there's been a miscommunication there. But also, if you're Richarlison, and I know we most of us might want him to go, I certainly do, but the club doesn't get to decide where he goes. If he has multiple offers on the table, it's a decision for him, his family, as to where he wants to go for his career, the financial situation, whatever's going to be most fruitful for him. We know Richarlison anyway, by the way, is someone that is incredibly charitable. You just look online and look at some of the money that he gives back to where he grew up in Brazil. He's a very, very charitable person in terms of giving back to his community. So I don't think he's necessarily that motivated by, I'm not going to accept a move to Everton just because of the money. I think clearly what he's saying is, I want to make my own decision, not other people make it for me. So clearly something has gone awry here where there's been a miscommunication. He's not happy with how the club has handled this situation. And he's basically gone, well, actually, hang on a minute. I'm not going to be forced into this. He also said in that statement he was very happy to go to Everton. And it's a club he's incredibly fond of. But he wanted to go on his terms, which I think actually from a player's point of view is probably fair enough and not something that is in the fans' control or the manager's control. So whatever's happened here, look, it's an ugly situation. Roberto De Zerbi has tied himself in knots over this, and he's going to be asked about this, no doubt. And I expect him to give a clear answer, because whatever's happened here is not going to be good for their relationship and the relationships in the dressing room. And also, I kind of approach this situation with a slight bit of skepticism towards Roberto De Zerbi anyway, because of how he has handled dressing rooms in the past. You only have to look at his situation at Marseille and the dressing room completely falling apart there under his management to see that actually situations like this are possible. So, yeah, I think the situation is really ugly. I think we would have all liked to see Richarlison go and Iliman and Jai come in. But rather than, I think, everyone jumping on the bandwagon and blaming Richarlison for this entire situation, I think it's slightly more nuanced than that. And I think De Zerbi's got as many questions to answer as Richarlison does here.
Do you think he didn't want to be a McGuinness in this deal? That maybe he thought, I'm not going to be helping Spurs out to get a player that they want and just to shove me. Do you think there was anything about that?
I think Josh is right. I think that he wants to choose where he wants to go. And I think that he will probably have a number of offers, from around the world where, he want to sit down and decide exactly what he wants to do. And I completely agree with Josh. He doesn't want to be told, you're going to go back to Everton because we want to do another deal for a player that is coming to Tottenham. But
it looks like he's going to be staying put now. But
I must say, Josh, that the version that I translated myself, it doesn't have that bit in there about I'm happy to go back to Everton. It doesn't have that bit in there. So wherever you've got that from, I didn't have that translated in the piece that I had. But let me just give you some good news. And I'm also going to say as well, and I know some people are going to batter me here, but we should be feeling happier than this. It seems like three guys here, we're all being grumpy about the transfer window. I'm delighted with the transfer window, and let's see how it pans out in the next 24 hours to see, what other players come in and go out. But at the end of the day, this is a major rebuild. It's not just a rebuild. It's a major rebuild at the football club, both on and off the pitch. So many changes. And you've also got to think about how many issues the likes of Ange Postecoglou walked into, the amount of issues that Thomas Frank walked into. None of these issues were ever sorted. So it's like a domino effect of so many issues at the football club still that Roberto De Zerbi will have to work through. So, yeah, but let me give you some good news. On Instagram just now, Dejan Kulusevski has just posted, after 477 days, I came back to full training. Everything is impossible until it is not. Want to see a miracle? Be one. See you soon. That's great. I tell you what, I can't wait to see him back in a Tottenham Hotspur shirt. Go on, Josh, what do you want to say?
Yeah, I was just going to touch before we go on to Kulusevski, because that makes up for everything, in my opinion. I absolutely adore him. And if it was down to me, he'd be the club captain. That's my personal view. On the Richarlison thing.
Sorry, Josh. Chris, I don't know if you want to see it. There's breaking news there on Tosan with David Ornstein.
Oh, here we go.
If you want to put it up there.
Here we go. Yeah. So Spurs have reached an agreement with Chelsea to sign Tosin on a permanent deal. Personal terms done and permission has been granted to take his medical. Actually, that is perfect timing. Gareth, let's come to you on this. We'll talk about Kulusevski shortly, John. So Fabrizio Romano earlier today, Tottenham are ready to buy Tosin on a permanent deal from Chelsea if they can also get Mudryk loan deal done. An inquiry for Tosin loan, but moving to a permanent deal. Now, of course, it has been confirmed by David Ornstein. What do you make of him, Gareth? Because we'll come on to talk about Kevin Danso. It looks like Danso's going to go out the door. Tosin is now coming in. Are you happy with this one or not?
I don't know if he's any better than Danso. That's another one of those ones. It's more questions than answers.
And also, I suppose, to throw the question in, since when do Spurs and Chelsea do business together?
I think when it suits Chelsea, and this probably suits Chelsea. I'm reading as well that Mudryk's close as well. So from what I understand, Chris, this has to be a permanent because you can't take two on loan from the same club, I believe. So that's why this is a permanent. Would we have gone for him if Danso was staying? Probably not. I get that this is more of a replacement for Danso, who's a squad player. So look, I'm not going to be overly negative on it. I would have preferred Danzo to stay over maybe Toussaint. But from what I hear, he's somebody that's considered a bit of a leader. But I just don't like taking scraps or leftovers from clubs that we're trying and compete with. I really don't get that. Like, and Chelsea's defense is nothing to be riding home about. I mean, this is a team that conceded 3 at the weekend against Brighton, so they're not perfect at the back, and he's considered dispensable. So I'm not overly excited about this, but it's the Mudryk one that I'm more upset about because of what I thought we were going to get to what we're now getting. Whereas this one is just being done for cover in terms of Danzo's leaving now, so we have to bring somebody in. I don't know what kind of fee is involved here. I've been searching. I don't see any fee involved. I don't know if Josh has any idea. And I haven't seen what kind of fee that Danzo's going for either. So I think when I see the numbers, I'll be able to give a better estimate, Chris, as they have we really benefited from this. But at the moment, it kind of just feels that, we've just had to go and get someone. It's like Liverpool have been criticised about their window, but they didn't sell Cody Gakpo because they didn't believe they were going to get a better replacement. Why are we letting Danzo go? Do we think that Toussaint's an upgrade? If De Zerbi does think that, then fair enough. But I hope we're just not letting Danzo go because it looks good on the books and we can get Toussaint on to balance the books. Maybe he's cheaper. I don't know. But, there is a lot of balancing of the books going on. So whilst we have spent a lot of money, Chris, we have sold a lot of players too. They balance the books. So, I would love to see the net spend tomorrow night when the window shuts, because all I'm hearing about is 400 million. But, we've probably brought on. Yeah, we sold a lot, over 200.
It's difficult with Kevin Danso, right? Because I think we can all probably sit here and agree that Kevin Danso is a very solid defender and is a player we'd absolutely categorically all want to keep at the club. But the reality is, with no European football, the opportunities for game time are few and far between. I mean, he didn't even start in the Charlton game, and he's probably thinking, well, if I'm not even going to start in a cup game against Charlton, then my minutes are limited, and I could go elsewhere, be a starting centre-back. He will start week in, week out for Sunderland as well. He will be their starting centre-back next to Alderete. And Ballard. He'll play in that team 100%. And he's going to play in European football as well. Kevin Danso is a good player. So clearly, I think that situation is the player realising that at this stage in his career, he doesn't want to be probably, 4th or 5th choice. They've gone and signed Senesi, Van Hecke, you've got Van der Ven, got Ben Davis there. He's going to be...
Josh Toussaint's leaving one bench. They join another bench then by this estimate because he's coming in to take Danzo's place. Is he happy? I don't know.
Yeah, and to be honest, he's probably going to be on a ridiculous wage doing so because he's been at Chelsea. Of course, he's going to be on stupid money. But I think that with Chelsea, they've done the same thing. They've bought players. Tosin's looking at where to go, and he's thinking probably, good money. If there's injuries, I might get a chance, what have you. So, the situation is probably different for both of them because for a player like Tosin, up until very recently, he obviously went to Chelsea, but his career wasn't, he was originally, I think, at City, wasn't he? And then he spent some time at West Brom and then Fulham. He's not been at particularly big clubs before. So, until he went to Chelsea. So he's probably thinking, great, at his age, he's 29, 30? Tosin, something like that?
Yeah. Josh, who's a better defender, Danso or Tosin?
Danso, hands down, not even close, not even a conversation. And Spurs were never going to get a better player for Kevin Danso going. So I would have kept him and I would have tried to encourage him to stay and done everything. But De Zerbi's probably, it sounds like from what we've seen with this, whatever this miscommunication between him and Richarlison is, that if a player is not 100% committed, he doesn't want them there, which I suppose as a fan base, we can take some comfort in and be quite pleased about. He wants people that actually want to be there. And if you don't want to be part of it, then leave. But at the same time, that doesn't allow for very much nuance. It's a very black and white view on things. And I think it's a real shame we're losing Kevin Danso. And I would have absolutely been happy for Kevin Danso to go on loan. If Kevin Danso wanted to get minutes and wanted to play this season, loan him out, and then have him back next season and say, well, look, if you don't want to be part of this squad that's going to try and push to get back into Europe, that's fine. But we expect to see you back here in pre-season when we are in Europe. And that's how we should have really done it. But instead, there is the question about the books here. And the same thing with Mudryk. They're both crap. They're both crap. They're rubbish. If they were that good, Chelsea wouldn't be so keen to get rid of them. Mudryk was wanted by Leeds. Leeds were trying to go in for a third time to try and get Mykhailo Mudryk over the line. There was potential rumoured interest from Coventry as well. I mean, is this really the company? No offence to Leeds. I think they started the season well. They're going to have a very good season this year. But is that the company we really want to be shopping with? And Tosin, really? I mean, they called him up.
Josh as well, right? We're potentially going to have 10 players coming through the door now with Mudryk and Tosin, right? 2 were loans, 2 were free transfers. Tosin's probably for peanuts because nobody wanted him. So essentially, we've spent big on half of those players, but the other 5 players were free transfers or loans. And fair enough, Marmoush is one you could look at and go, well, but there is, if we were going to pay that kind of money for Njai, that tells me there's money there still to go out and sign a player. But we've gone down this route now of getting people on the cheap. So I'm a bit deflated.
You got Ilya Zabani there. You had Taylor Harwood-Bellis is at Villa Park watching them tonight. Other wingers, Ibrahim Mbai, for example, who's gone to Villa.
Yeah, he's what they follow.
PSG. Of course, he's Iliman Ndiaye's Senegal international teammate. If these players are going to join Aston Villa, and you've seen the summer they've had where they've been absolutely depleted, I don't see any reason why we can't be shopping in that market. And the other thing really is, I hate to say it, and I cannot believe I'm saying this, I actually would have rather us signed Alejandro Garnacho than Mudryk. And that's crazy because I wouldn't want either of them. I wouldn't touch them with a barge pole. But
it's funny when I suggested Rashford to Chris a few weeks ago, and there was a bit of a negative feedback on that. I didn't think in my wildest dreams we'd end up with Mudryk.
Well, Josh,
Jack Grealish would have been better.
Josh, before you go any further, we've just had a post from Italian journalist and transfer expert Fabrizio Romano on Tosin, Mudryk and Tottenham. He has stated Mudryk and Tosin deals to Tottenham from Chelsea are both verbally agreed in principle. Tosin on a permanent deal, Mudryk on a loan. Both deals still require agreements on the personal terms, but Tottenham Hotspur are on it. Josh, it looks like that this Mudryk deal is going to be done. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on this? And what's he going to bring to Tottenham that we don't have?
Look, all we can hope for is a miracle. We can hope that De Zerbi is going to do something crazy with him and re-energize him and get his best self that he was at Shakhtar, at Spurs. Because if that is the case, then we could have a really good player on our hands. But unfortunately, it's going to go one of 2 ways. He's either going to be the best winger we've seen in the last, 5-6 years, or he's going to be the worst. I don't think there's an in-between here. And to what I was saying before, it's like, had I known, if the deal was we had to sign a failed Premier League winger this summer, then there are players that I would have picked above Mudryk. I think Mudryk will, though, have a point to prove. If I'm trying to be positive about it, he's still young. He's going to have a massive point to prove having had this ban. He wants a career ahead of him, and he has worked with Roberto De Zerbi. So let's hope and pray that this isn't Timo Werner 2.0. But, of course, when you look at the evidence of signing these types of players, often it only ends one way. But let's just hope. I'm not convinced, but I will happily sit here and come back on the podcast when Mudryk has scored 2 on his debut and proved us all wrong and becomes a world beater. Do I think it's going to happen? No, but that's the thing. You're asking this question in the immediacy of it, and you will never know until he's kicked a ball at the club. Tosin's the one that makes far less sense to me. That is the one that is completely
what other top club do you think would take a chance on Mudryk? Because look at the teams that have been linked with him. And none. Spurs is the outlier. Spurs, if you look at the teams that's been linked with Mudryk, Spurs jumps out right away because the rest of them are all teams that you'd be seen probably fighting relegation this year. Maybe
Well,
or
look,
maybe Leeds. You know, in terms of the teams it's been linked with, I don't think a Liverpool or an Arsenal or a Man United would go for Mudryk on loan, no matter what kind of situation they were in. So it's very strange to me that we're going down this route of it. Just
I
smacks
agree.
of desperation. It's
we did.
desperate. It is. It is.
We did also finish 17th twice, right?
Yeah.
So,
Hold on, Josh. Let me just give you some stats here. So Mudryk for Chelsea in the Premier League, 53 appearances, only 5 goals and only 4 assists. Now, those numbers need to improve drastically.
yeah, massively. Of course they do. Of course they do. They're shocking. But what I would say, we finished 17th twice, and the reality is, as we've seen with Illiman and Jai, and you made this point yourself, Gareth. The second a big club comes in for a bigger club comes in for a player that we want, we're never going to get that player. So that is kind of the reality. If a club is serious,
there's no danger of that with Mudryk.
Well, exactly. So it's rubbish, and we shouldn't be shopping for players like Mudryk. And I think there are several players we could have gone for. I'd have much rather taken a Harry Wilson on a free transfer. There are loads of players. You know, Palace don't want to seem to let Ismail Assar go, but that's another player I would have been willing to.
Another player that I mentioned on the show a couple of weeks ago was Kevin Chada. He's another player I would take.
Well, I was speaking to a Brentford fan in the office today, and the Brentford fan said, "I'll happily take the money for Shada," which says what they think about him. But the fact that this is what we're left with, this screams Roberto De Zerbi is all over this decision. And there's a lot of people now starting to question. And it's really interesting because how many times have we said on this podcast, back the manager, give the manager what the manager wants, give the manager control, allow the manager to bring his players in. And now, when the manager's decision ends up with Mykhailo Mudryk, who is a player he does know, now I think people are starting to question, well, have we given him too much power, too much control? Because certainly Mudryk's not a player I think any of us would have picked at the start of the window. So it's an interesting one that now that, the club have done exactly that, do we kind of just trust the process and trust that the manager's got this right? Tossin's the only one that makes zero sense whatsoever. And Mudryk might make no sense to others, but I can at least see the link with the Shakhtar Donetsk thing and he had the best out of him there. And, Spurs certainly would have wanted Mudryk at the time that he moved to the Premier League in the first place. So,
yeah, it's Gareth. Josh has got a great point, because if it wasn't for Roberto De Zerbi, we wouldn't be a Premier League team, because we were down and out under Thomas Frank and Igor Tudor. When Igor Tudor managed his last game, it didn't look like we were ever going to get a point in those remaining 7 Premier League games that De Zerbi managed us for. So, we have to give him the credit for that. And I suppose you have to trust the manager. You have to trust this process, because let's face it, like I touched on earlier, going through all those different managers and doing the same thing over and over again, it did feel very much that, we were never going to progress, because if you keep doing the same thing and you keep having the same result, then, you're going to go round in circles.
No, and listen, whilst I disagree with some of these players that are being picked, I do think that it's important that the manager has the overall say on it. So, De Zerbi cannot turn around like Antonio Conte or Jose Mourinho at the end if this doesn't work out and say he hasn't been backed. He's been backed 100%. If this doesn't work, it's solely on Roberto De Zerbi. If the change room falls apart, like Josh has said at our clubs, or these players don't work out, he will have to take responsibility. So in a way, there isn't that. It is different from the past. So, I really hope it does work out under De Zerbi, and I really hope that all these players are successful. But whilst I'm saying that I disagree with some of the players that he's picking, I do think it is important that he gets that control, because ultimately we can't have an situation where the manager's criticising the club for not giving him what he's asked for. He's got everything that he's asked for here, really, and the fact that we're bringing in Mudryk tells you that the club are giving him exactly what he wants, because I don't think anyone else at the club would have come up with Mudryk. Only Roberto De Zerbi, as Josh says, could have come up with Mudryk.
Josh, is the problem today the fact that we've had such a good window, like I said, about bringing players like Fernandes, Tonali, you're spending real money, we can see the ambition. And then is the problem today where you are seeing signings like the types that we've had before that haven't worked out? Is that why everyone's a bit grumpy and a bit surprised, I suppose, with these signings of Mudryk and Tosin?
Yeah, and this is I think it's the contrast, right? And I'm getting some people in the comments saying, that I can't flip flop, and I see your point. And what I'm saying is, we were saying let's back the manager. We've backed the manager, and so ultimately this is on the manager. I completely agree with that point. I might not agree with those decisions and the players that are brought in, and I might not think before they've kicked a ball that this is a good signing, but if we're all in on this manager and we're really getting behind him and we're putting everything behind De Zerbi, then we've got to trust the process, whether we like it or not. We've got to trust the players that he's bringing in, whether we like it or not. But another good point that was made in the comments is Tosin's probably not going to play very much. He might play a non-league team in the FA Cup. I would not expect him to start at Anfield in the next round of the Carabao Cup. I would not expect him to start in the North London derby or in any of these Premier League games unless there are injuries. So I'm concerned because I would have liked to see someone come in who could probably play both there and right back if we weren't going to bring a right back in. And that does worry me, is that, if you're in a position where, God forbid you end up without Porro and Van Hecke, what do we do then? Because we know that Senesi seems to be a left-sided centre-back. I can't remember, Gareth, you'll be able to tell me if Senesi's left-footed or right-footed.
Left.
Yeah, so unless you're going to play Senesi on the right, which would be quite uncomfortable, I don't think many managers would like that. It's basically, if we have an injury crisis, that's when Tosin will play, or when we're playing a non-league or lower league side in an FA Cup. So
that's the areas that will concern you. If we do get an injury at right back or right centre back, we're in trouble. Exactly. And the goalkeeping situation, I'm not convinced. I think we could have been doing, when Emi Martinez was going for what he was, I think we should have been in the conversation. But then there's a big question mark now about, we've signed a whole lot of players that may prefer to play on the right side of the front three, but can anyone really do a job as good on the left? If Marmoush is going to be playing through the middle as a 9, are we going to have, is it going to be Tell competing with Mudryk? Because, that is going to infuriate the fans if that's the case. I think we're going to have to do something with possibly even playing Marmoush on the left now and playing Solanke through the middle, because this striker situation hasn't been addressed.
I'll give you an observation, and Gareth, I ask you this, and I want to know your thoughts too, Chris. And I ask you this, Gareth, as I know you're a coach. I've been saying I would like to see Kudus in the middle, and people might not agree with this, but I've been saying I'd like to see Savinho on the right, Marmoush on the left, Kudus in the middle, and Solanke up top. And the reason why I say this is because I don't think we have enough going forward in that midfield three that we've seen, Bentancur, Tonali and Fernandes. To me, Fernandes is the outlier. He's clearly the superior footballer in terms of progressing the ball. But the three of them, to me, seem quite similar. And we had no sort of player that was getting on the ball, turning and making things happen. And Kudus plays down the middle for Ghana. And also an observation from, I can't believe I'm saying this, from Thomas Frank's first game in charge in that Super Cup, was how good Kudus was down the middle in that game and how good his hold-up play is. And if you could have someone like a Kudus in and around the second ball from Solanke, would that give us maybe a little bit of a better dynamic rather than trying to force Savinho out left where he was rubbish for City, trying to force, Marmoush outright or something like that. I wonder if that's possibly a solution. And then Kulusevski coming back into the side my view has always been that Kulusevski is best as a 10 as well. But of course, that's going to take a long time for him to get back into the swing of things.
And then Josh, the other thing that worries you from my point of view, and I suppose the first two games tell you a story as well, is where are the goals going to come from in this team? It seems we've got loads of tricky, skillful players, but have we got reliable goal scorers on this team? You know, you can't bank on Mudryk or Tell. Savio's record's not been great in terms of scoring goals. You know, Marmoush, we expect him to score goals, yes, but I still think we're going to need a lot from Solanke. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Richarlison now, because, you know, if he is going to be staying, which it looks pretty likely now from what I've seen tonight that he is going to be staying, you know, we're going to have to bring him back into the team.
Why does it look likely that he's going to stay? After writing that message, wouldn't you think more that he'd be going out the door now?
Well, I hope so. But I'm looking at it, and we've got 24 hours to find him a new club. It's not going to be easy.
But he said very clearly, first of all, are we seriously, is the club going to sit here at the end of the transfer window with only one striker? Is that going to be acceptable? Yeah. Solanke, notoriously injury prone, is our only out and out striker.
That's what makes me think he's going to stay now.
Also, he said in that statement, I am a Tottenham player. You know, I'm under contract. I'm at the club's disposal, or words to that effect. So one of the point that I was going to make before we had that breaking news was Richarlison was our top scorer last season. And without his goals, we absolutely would have been relegated. And he came up in some really big moments for us last year. So he's, in terms of the sentiment of that statement, I think he's probably trying to say the club should have been a little bit more respectful to a player that actually, as bad as they were last season, was our top goal scorer and actually contributed far more than a lot of the other attacking players did.
And also, Josh, in the previous seasons, we've sold our top goal scorers: Harry Kane, Heung-min Son, Brennan Johnson. So Richarlison could be the fourth consecutive one.
I like the shout in the comments, by the way. Someone's saying we should go for Brian Brobby. I do like that as a shout.
Yeah. Son and umpire.
Yeah. Josh, very quickly on Mudryk. His last Premier League appearance for Chelsea was against Arsenal on the 10th of November, 2024, nearly 2 years ago. And his last competitive Chelsea appearance was in Europe in the Conference League in November 2014. Does this bother you or worry you, the fact that he hasn't played competitive football for such a long time?
Yeah, I think firstly, I really encourage people to go and read up the actual full story of what's happened with this drugs ban and why the drugs ban was lifted. As someone pointed out in the comments, someone in the comments is saying he thinks it was a cock up with the authorities. I don't think Mykhailo Mudryk actually intentionally tried to dope. If you read the full story and everything that's happened, it doesn't look like that's the case at all. It does worry me that for 2 years he's not played competitive football. But
he'll fit right in else, Josh, because all of our players are in bad condition according to the manager. So
Well, what I would say is one thing we absolutely cannot take away from him is his technical ability. Everyone saw it when he was at Shakhtar and he was viral, and everyone was YouTube compilation after YouTube compilation, Twitter thread after Twitter thread, biggest clubs in the world looking at signing him from Shakhtar. You know, clearly he's got ability there. There is a player in there. And De Zerbi must seem to think that he can get the best out of him again. And there must be a reason why he's willing to take that punt on Mudryk now. Yeah. And I think, actually, to be honest, we know that we're not going to have the complete team this season. Is it a relatively risk-free situation for Spurs where you loan him in, unless you guys have information that I've not yet seen? I've seen nothing about an obligation to buy or anything like that. Just a straight loan is what I seem to be reading.
Yeah,
that's fairly risk-free. You're bringing in a player, giving him an opportunity. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, you don't have to have him again. It does make sense, but it's not what I want to see.
when we did the Timo Werner show when he signed, when we did a podcast, I heard very similar things. It's like deja vu. This.
Well, And then you bring Miami in last year. That was risk free, and we nearly ended up in the championship. There's non risk free about bringing on players like this.
I'll never forget his goal. Was it City that he scored against, and he got the assist for the league? Yeah, and then he got the assist. Didn't need to make it 4-0 at Man City. So we had a couple of moments at least.
We did. Gareth, talking about De Zerbi, he said on Mudryk, he is like another son. And when I went out to New Zealand, Australia, and went to those training sessions, you can tell that, even with the situation with Bergvall, he was putting his arm around him all the time, talking to each player. His relationship with players is absolutely exceptional. And he's very, very close with players. He works with players very, very closely, and always got his arm around them, as I said. Real man-manager. Is he the man? If there's anyone, he's going to get the best out of Mudryk, because he knows him from Shakhtar Donetsk, working with him in Ukraine.
Well, if you're looking for a positive spin on it, you can tell yourself that. Maybe he can get something out of him that nobody else could.
It's up to you whether you're positive or not.
I just feel underwhelmed, Chris. This seems like a big gamble. You can only judge Mudryk on recent. And his time at Chelsea wasn't good. I'm talking about the time when he was playing at Chelsea.
But my question is,
was a long time ago now.
If you're going to go anywhere, I suppose it is under De Zerbi, because if you listen to any interview from any ex-player, any player that has worked with De Zerbi, they all speak so highly of him.
Oh, he's a good he's a very good coach. There's no doubt about it. His coaching ability, Roberto De Zerbi, is a quality coach. But, Mudryk has really struggled since he's moved to the Premier League. And yes, De Zerbi is a good coach, but can he get something out of him that, he's had a lot of different coaches at Chelsea, and I'm sure some of them are good coaches as well, and he couldn't get anything out of him. And why are Chelsea happy to let this player go? If they felt that he could be useful to them, why are they just happy to let him go on a loan? And they're not even looking for an option. They're just happy to get rid of him, get his wages off the books for a year. So, it's going to be it would be a bigger surprise to me, and probably both of you, if this turns out to be a successful transfer. Let's be honest. But I would love to sit here and hold my hands up and say I was wrong, and that this Mudryk thing was a stroke of genius, and that De Zerbi deserves a lot of credit for it. But I've just been stung so many times in the past with deals like this, like Timo Werner, like Cowlin, and this feels so similar, in that we're taking a player that nobody else really wants of any substance, and he's going to come here. We're going to have to try and put on a brave fist that, what if we get the Mudryk at Shakhtar Donetsk? Just like we says, what if we get the Timo Werner at Leipzig? Or what if we get the Cowlin at Juventus? But realistically, these players have been poor for a long time before they've came to us, and it's continued on. And we have just been in our home for them for a year. So, I'll be shocked if this Mudryk one works out. But listen, there's nobody that would love to be proved more than me. And as soon as he puts on that Spurs shirt, I'll be hoping that he can score goals and beat players. The one thing that he's got in abundance, as Josh spoke about, is lightning pace. Now, I don't know what kind of condition he's in from being out for a year and a half, 2 years. I don't know what sort of pre-season he's had with Chelsea. But I think we're looking for a lot of things here for this to be working from the start. He'll probably, Josh, would you expect that this one might take a bit of time if we're going to see the best of Mudryk? It's likely to be down the line. It's not going to be from day one here, I don't think.
Yeah, I think to be honest, Mudryk shouldn't be, and this is the thing that just is so deeply depressing about the whole thing.
Josh, let me ask you a question here as well, because Easy Mode King says here, I'd rather have not signed anyone than sign Mudryk. And I think it's fair to say as well that Roberto De Zerbi, on the last day of the season, having stayed up in the Premier League after beating Everton, he said we need 2 players in each position. So, like you said earlier, Tosin probably won't get much game time, but it's very important to have that depth. Particularly how, we've had so many injuries at the football club in the last couple of years. So if I was to ask you about our front three, who is the best front three when everyone is fit and available? And then who are the reserve front three, if you like?
God, it's a good question. Assuming the window shuts with those two coming in and the players expect to go out, but Richie stays. God, it's a tough. I've been debating this all week because I was looking at the potential depth that we have, and it is quite mad. But equally, we're still there thinking, oh, there's something big missing. I would go Savinho right, Marmoush left, Kudus or Kulusevski, toss of a coin in the 10, and Solanke up top. That's what I would do. And then I would go as the backups, if everyone's fit, Odebear left, whoever out of Kudus or Kulusevski is not playing in the 10. If it's Kulusevski playing 10, then Kudus on the right, the Richarlison up top, and figure out that way. Sort of, it would all be quite interchangeable. I know it's a Richarlison, but I think one thing that is fairly positive that we can take is that a lot of these players are quite versatile and can play across different positions. For me, a fully fit Kulusevski, fit and firing, has to start under every single circumstance imaginable. Kulusevski is one of the first people that starts fit and firing. And for me, he is by far, best in the 10, because I don't think
would you put him above Xavi Simons if he was fit and firing?
I forgot about Xavi Simons. That's crazy, right? That's crazy. So this is the crazy thing about it. We do actually have quite a lot of depth in a good way. But notice the player that I didn't mention there is Matisse Tell, right? And that was the thing when I put my head in my hands. I was thinking about, oh my goodness, as it stands, we may have to start Matisse Tell for the foreseeable because Mudryk's nowhere near the pace yet. It's going to take him, you're right, Gareth, I think it will take him a long time to get back into the swing of things. If we are ever going to see a good Mudryk, it's going to take a little while. So I think your options are, I suppose, if I'm thinking about this again, in an ideal scenario, I'd probably go Solanke, Marmoush left, Kudus 10, Savinho right. But that's only because I personally really like Kudus central. I think
Josh, the one thing that worries me about this, all these players we know have got ability in terms of Xavi Simons, Madison, Kulusevski, Savio, Marmoush. I'm just, where's the goals? Where's the goals? I'm concerned about the goals.
Gareth, that's exactly where I was going to go because Espen here from Norway, and thanks so much for your message here, still can't see who's going to score 5+ goals in this team except Marmoush, and 2 injuries away from Tosin and Gray being our right side defence. Now, that's exactly the question I wanted to ask as well. Where are the goals coming from? Because you're going to need Solanke to be on top form. You're going to need him to be fit and available. Marmoush is going to have to chip in with a number of goals as well. And Roberto De Zerbi has come out and said this a number of times anyway. Players like Savio, they're going to need to score. They're going to need to assist. They're going to need to create in this team. So how confident are you? Yeah. And I know all three of us, we've been on this podcast now for many years talking about Harry Kane and Heung-min Son and the opportunities that them two used to create for themselves and each other and for the rest of the team. How confident are you that we are going to score a hatful of goals that we need to climb up that Premier League table? Gareth?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were asking Josh. Sorry. Well, that is the one worry, because whilst I think there's a lot of talent in these players, I think they're all kind of similar. And that is what worries me. Xavi Simons, Marmoush, Savio, Kudos, all very technically gifted players, can beat men, can score or can cross, can maybe set up chances, can do magic things. And we've seen like Xavi Simons that goal against Brighton, what he's capable of. But do you see him scoring 10 plus goals a season? I'm not sure. And I would be the same with Savio based on his goal record at all our clubs. Again, a very flashy, skillful player. Will he produce the output is what you would have to be questioning. So I do think Marmoush and Solanke are going to have to be the two main goal contributors. And look, it's going to boil fans, but I will be shocked if Richarlison leaves the window now, just purely based on I don't see another striker coming in. So Richarlison's going to have to come back into the team, because whatever you think about him, he still is more reliable in terms of goals than some of these players that are better than him. In terms of, yes, we know they've got a lot more ability than Richarlison, but Richarlison can get you goals. So I think De Zerbi and him's going to have to patch things up, and he's going to have to be, on the bench, ready to come on and possibly score a goal. We seen it last year, Chris, at Liverpool, at Anfield, in that game that Igor Tudor picked up his point. He come on and he caused chaos. He's a different option. Whilst we know he's not good enough long term, if he's going to be here, he can contribute. And I still think, if we can't get another striker, then I just don't see the club sanction his sale now. And then we're going to have to try and fit him on somewhere in terms of making an impact. But that's the one worry. We've all these number 10s and tricky and fast winners. I just worry about goals being, delivered, and, time will tell.
Just on what you're saying, Gareth, I think this is where I keep pushing this narrative of this sort of three attacking midfielders behind a Solanke. And the reason why I keep saying this is because I don't have faith in that midfield as we played against, Newcastle, that's going to create enough. And what I'm hoping is that if you have a three of Marmoush, Kudus and Savio, that there is so much pace, trickery, and just pure chaos in and around Solanke that will create a better and more creative and more expressive dynamic going forwards. Because that's one thing we know about Kudus. That's one thing we know about Savio and Marmoush, is they are incredibly technical and expressive footballers. They've got a lot of pace too. So I'm hoping that kind of dynamic can work. But also on Richarlison, I am hoping still that there is a good bid that can come in for him. And there are two names, people are talking quite a lot about Brian Brobby in the comments since we kind of mentioned that, and the initial comment was made about that. I've seen someone else mention about Mateta. Mateta's injured currently, but we've seen with other situations that there are ways around that for a medical. Mateta, of course, has this massive contract dispute with Crystal Palace going on that he's taken to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Mateta would be the exact kind of profile I'd be looking at. And that's also similarly to Brobby. I know that Mateta is much taller than Brobby, but very, very physical strikers. And that's my big question mark over both Richarlison and Dom Solanke, is that Richarlison, rightly as people point out, seems to spend more time rolling around on the floor than he does making runs into the box. And Solanke, for a player of his size, his physical size, he's not very good at hold-up play, and he's not very physical. He's not a player that if you go long, he's going to hold that ball up, turn, and play a ball off. Whereas Mateta or Brobby, I think both of them, I can see bullying a centre-half. Solanke and Richarlison don't seem to have that in them. So I think that's the exact kind of profile we should keep an eye out for tomorrow in case things do change. And I think with how unpredictable this window has been, I mean, none of us ever would have imagined Tosin or Mudryk coming out of nowhere today. I think that if that teaches us anything, let's not rule out the possibility that Richarlison does get his move and Spurs do make a last-minute move for a striker. We know that has always been part of the plan. Remember, Romano and Ornstein and others, we've seen them tweet this, that there has been part of the plan was to also bring in a striker. I think, Fabrizio Romano said the idea is for Marmoush, Savio, and a striker. So I don't think the club will be done now. I think they will absolutely be looking to see what they can do. But yeah, I'd love to know who you guys would like to see as that striker if we were to bring one in. But I do think that Brobby Mateta, that kind of really physical striker who can then complement that pace, that trickery, and that real technical ability and speed of the players that I've mentioned in those attacking positions. I also include Xavi Simons in that group of players as well. I think that is exactly the dynamic that I think might just unlock that problem we've got, which is, we don't look like scoring in a brothel, let alone on the football pitch.
Gareth, before I talk to you about strikers, Josh, Drum 19 says here, De Zerbi keeping the seat warm. But Pochettino, Danso shouldn't have been sold and Spence shouldn't have been sold. Now, this is what we spoke about earlier about, players like Jed Spence and players like Kevin Danso. If they want to leave the football club, then you can't really stop them. And if De Zerbi is starting this brand new project, you need players that want to be there.
But I don't know. I would have to know how much these players want to leave. If Danzo has turned around and says to Roberto De Zerbi, I am going to refuse to play, for the club, or because he's only going to Sunderland. It's not like he's getting a massive move. Cody Gabco, I'm sure probably, he probably wanted to go to Man City, but he's not down tools at Liverpool.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think what's happened is when he came in, he's basically said to the players, help me out for the next 7 games. Let's stay up. And if you want to leave at the end of the season or leave, then you tell me and I'll make sure it happens. So I think that he's kind of had that deal with the players that, you help me, we stay up in the Premier League for this season. And if you want your move, you'll get your move. And, some of them have come out and said, yes, I want to move. So, with the players that we've brought in, particularly someone like Danso, when you're bringing in Senesi and you're bringing in Van Hecke and you're seeing a certain style of play, ball playing centre backs, Danso is a good solid defender, but he's not a ball playing centre back. He's very different to what De Zerbi wants. So I completely get why he wants out.
No, that's fair enough. But we brought these players in months ago. So why is it only come up now that he wants to go? That's what I'm confused about. I'm confused about the timing around this. And I do hope, Josh did mention something that triggered me earlier on about this Roberto De Zerbi history with dressing rooms. And this has been a messy few days, Chris. With Danzo now going out the door. This statement with Richarlison. I just hope things aren't falling apart behind the scenes here now, because, like you says, Senesi, Van Hecke, those players were signed at the start of the summer. So Danzo was played the whole pre-season, and all of a sudden he's moving now on transfer deadline day.
Well, I would just challenge that, Gareth, because, and I don't disagree with the sentiment, but what I would just say is that Danzo hasn't played all of pre-season. He had his first appearance in pre-season, lasted a couple of minutes, and he got sent off against Chelsea.
I think about 4 minutes.
And then he had maybe 1 or 2 other appearances. I think he played in the 70-minute game. I think he played the second Hoffenheim game or whatever it was. If you're Kevin Danso, right? First of all, he was unbelievable in that last 7 games under De Zerbi to keep us up, right? But he was only there because Romero got injured against Sunderland. He wouldn't have started. Had Romero and Van der Ven both been fit, he wouldn't have even played. And I just wonder if Danso's there thinking, okay, these defenders have come in, but I've played a really important role in keeping this team, up. He didn't have a bad World Cup either. I've gone to the World Cup. I've come back. And he's probably had a chat with De Zerbi, and De Zerbi has said, earn your place. And he's probably thought, okay, I'll crack on and I'll work hard and I'll try and earn that place. And I just wonder if the reason why this decision has come late is because even in a game like Charlton, where he's not starting, probably thought, okay, well, if I can't even start in this game, then I'm not going to get any minutes this season. And I'm going to, my agent's now going to see if there are any interested clubs. As it happens, a player of Danso's quality in the way that he performed and having made the signings we've made, his agent's probably already speaking to clubs, or clubs are approaching his agent saying, you're not going to get much game time here. Have you thought about a move? So I just wonder if that's come late because of the character that Kevin Danso is, because I don't think none of us know Kevin Danso. He's not our mate, but I would be really shocked to find out that Kevin Danso is a disruptor. He seems to me like someone that does just kind of get on with it. So that's just
what I'm saying.
My theory as to why it's happened late. I just think he didn't have much of a pre-season, and as things have started, it's become very clear that he's not part of those plans. And I'm amazed because he came on against Charlton. He scored with his first touch. He defended really well, I thought. With the whatever it was, the Sudocrem on his head or whatever it was, and I'd like to think that he would have been in the reckoning for the Newcastle game, and at that point, I think it was quite clear he's not part of those plans at all. So, what can he do?
I love a comment a couple of minutes ago, Chris. Love you, love the channel, but you need more positive guests. Do you know what, Josh? You're not talking. Gareth talks like it's a 6 out of 10 window, like he says. But when you say it's an 8 out of 10 window, you don't talk like it's an 8 out of 10 window.
Look, I can sit here and list all the positives, but I think that's stating the obvious. No, I already mentioned we've broken our transfer record twice. If you'd offered us this window at the start, we'd have absolutely taken it. And I'm also trying to be realistic. And I've said we're not going to be fixed overnight. It's going to take more than one window. The only thing that's thrown me, and I would be talking like it's an 8 out of 10 window despite the performances so far, if we hadn't been given Tosin Adarabioyo and Mikhailo Mudryk out of nowhere, 2 Chelsea rejects, that it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It doesn't change how good the window is.
To be honest, Chris, the timing of this and this show tonight has just coincided because we've just found out about all this as well. And it is hard to be positive when you think you're getting a player like Njai and you get this. And look, Josh, somebody Danzo, okay? I do think that this is to balance the books. I really do, because you look at Liverpool today, they can't get a player. They replaced Cody Gakpo. They've told Cody Gakpo, I'm sorry, you're not leaving. We have to keep you. Player, fine, I'll stay. Whereas I think in this situation with Danzo, we've looked around and says, right, we can get decent money for Danzo here. Who's available? Oh, yes, Tosin's available. Let's just bring him in. There's no thought process. Spurs just got whoever was available. There's no thought process behind this player being an upgrade on Danzo. It's just it was easy to get done so we could sell Danzo. That's the only reason. Whereas Liverpool, if they were going to replace... Yeah, and if Liverpool were going to replace Cody Gakpo, they were going to replace him with someone better or keep Cody Gakpo, whereas we were just happy to let Danzo go and bring in a player that Chelsea don't want just to make this deal happen. So, I'm not happy about that at all.
What about if we'd have signed Tosin and Mudryk in the first couple of weeks of the window, and now in the last couple of days we signed Tonali and Fernandes? Would it have been very different for you?
It depends, doesn't it? If Tonali and Mudryk were a disaster during pre-season, you would be going, well, yes, these signings are great, but these ones from earlier in the window were good enough. So, no, I would still give it the same 6 out of 10.
Gareth, 2 quick questions. Now, in the last couple of days since Spurs lost at home against Newcastle, someone actually phoned into TalkSport to O'Hara and Cundy and said that they wanted Roberto De Zerbi gone after 2 games, which I just find absolutely crazy. And the meltdown that we have seen from the Spurs fan base in the last couple of days, what have you made of it, and how patient should the fans be with De Zerbi? Because as we spoke about, all 3 of us, earlier on, no one has had this level of control. When you think about, good managers at Spurs, Pochettino, you think about win now managers, Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte. Can you imagine, one of those 3 that I've just named? Can you imagine the level of transfer window if they had that transfer, like this transfer window, at the football club. You know, they'd be ecstatic with that.
Of course, and look, listen, anyone that's calling for the manager to be sacked after 2 games is ridiculous, in my opinion. You know, this is a manager that kept us in the league last year when, you know, you could probably draw a list of names and put them on one hand in terms of who could have done the job De Zerbi did last year. You know, we all thought, like you said earlier on the show, Chris, that we were doomed. So he's got a lot of credit in the bank. You know, from watching him at Brighton, we know he's a very good football coach, very good style of play. The first 2 games they haven't went to plan. Of course not. We haven't looked like a Roberto De Zerbi team even in these first 2 games as well. So there's certainly something missing in terms of, you know, the levels of fitness that the players are displaying just looks way off it. There is a lack of, because we brought on so many players, you know, there is a lack of togetherness. There is patterns of play that is missing, and that is going to take time, and that is going to take more games. But Chris, what I would say is in modern football, and obviously we do the predictions show on a Friday. You know, Chris, if we're sitting here in a few weeks' time and we're sitting bottom of the league, spent all this money, this manager's going to come under serious pressure. So
From who?
Sometimes
who's he under pressure
fans.
from? The board, the owners, the fans, the media.
Well, everyone will have. There's pressure on every game when you're in a Premier League manager, of course there is. But the longer this continues, you know, if we go on, you know, if Forest goes south at the weekend, and those 2 home games against Everton and Villa before the international break, you know, if they go wrong, you know, people will be saying, how can he spend all this money and be bottom of the league after 5 games? You know, there will be question marks from fans. There will be question marks from the board. Of course there will. You know, everybody will have a say in it. You know, depending on what kind of, you know, understanding there is there with the board. You know, are they going to give him more time because there has been so many players to come in? Only them will find out. But what the fans want, Chris, fans are very black and white. They want to see wins. They want to see points. They want to see results. And sometimes it doesn't have to be pretty football to get it done. They just want to see results. Now, I'm not in that camp. I would like to give this manager a lot of time, you know, but he does have to get results at some stage. You know, as I said, if we go on to international break, Chris, in the bottom 3, the first 3 or 4 games after that break are going to be crucial, because you get on the around Halloween, November time, and this has still not been fixed. Of course, the manager will come under a lot of pressure. But from my point of view, we need to give him all the time in the world to make this right, because he's picked these players. They're his players. You know, let him have an opportunity to make it work. But I will be wrong, Chris, if I sit here and says I'm 100% convinced, like I was in the summer. I do think there's been some questionable decisions in terms of the players that have been picked. Like Josh spoke about, the dressing room problems at Marseille, this Richarlison thing is a bit similar to something that's happened in De Zerbi's past, where there's been misinterpretation of what a player has asked for or what he hasn't asked for. It's been blew up in the media. So there is going to be question marks, Chris. And if these 2 players end up playing a bigger role due to injuries and they don't do it, only one man can be blamed, and that will be De Zerbi. So I think the board have given a lot of rope, and if he doesn't make it work, then there will be no excuses. I don't think anyone can blame the board, because they've spent a lot of money in this transfer window. You know, it could only be on the soul of the management team. But I think we really need to give this manager to at least Halloween, see how we are at Halloween in terms of, is there improvement? No, I don't. What, Chris? You know, I don't mean as in it has to be perfect by Halloween, but if there's steady improvement after the international break, Halloween, November time, you know, but if it's more of the same, if we're still seeing Brentford and Newcastle performances in November, I think it will be a big worry. You would start to think then, can he turn it around?
People normally say to Christmas, Gareth, not Halloween. Halloween just gives people nightmares. So that's
what I meant by Halloween is we need to have won a game by Halloween. That's my point. We need to have won a game by then.
Yeah. We certainly don't want any more nightmares at Tottenham. Josh, he's right though, Gareth, isn't he? Because the manager does need time, but at the same time, when you've spent that much money, you do need to deliver results, and you do need to deliver a style of play that, you know, people are going to be excited, because it's very important for us fans to see progression, you know, going forward. And Gareth's also right as well that, you know, the board, how many years, for someone like you coming on this podcast for the amount of years you have now, you've always been very, very critical of the board. People can't be critical anymore. And it's interesting what Gareth said there, because Tim Sherwood said exactly the same thing after the 3-0 defeat against Brentford. He said, well, it's all on De Zerbi now, because you can't blame the board because they have delivered.
Well, I think we can still find holes in the board. I think we definitely need to replace Johan Lange. He needs to go. We need a proper director of football in after losing Paratici. But I will try and avoid my criticism of the board, because no matter how you shape it, I still think that the board are what they are. How can you go this long without a stadium naming rights deal as well? Anyway,
you're still being critical of the board and the owners, Josh, because I don't know whether you saw the very long statement that Vinay put out before the Newcastle game. There was a lot of stuff in there talking about transfers. Actually, I'll read some of the stuff out here.
Sorry, Chris. Did Vinay not put out a really long statement last season and we finished 17th?
Yep. But of course, Josh, we have spent hundreds of million. I'm not defending the football club or him, but I would say that the level of ambition has been something that we have never ever seen before. I really do hope
massively.
I really hope, as a Spurs fan, that we see this level of commitment and ambition in future windows as well, and not just this one. But
had we finished 6th, I'm not sure we would have spent the same.
It's always a worry for me as well, but boys. It's always a worry for me when I start seeing Pochettino's name again, because it seems like we've been here before. When we're on a bad form, people start mentioning Pochettino. Like, he can fix this.
I was going to say that, Gareth and Josh. To me, I find that a little bit disrespectful, because we owe a lot to De Zerbi for keeping us in the Premier League.
I agree. He's got a lot of credit, I think.
I think that ship has sailed. I wanted Poch before we got De Zerbi in. And we have got to back De Zerbi. You originally asked me about De Zerbi, so I'll go back to that, because I can.
The comments tonight are filled with Pochettino. That's
you're so negative. Come on.
I could pick holes at the board for hours, but I'm not going to do that anymore.
This is a new era, Josh. This is meant to be exciting.
Yeah,
this is meant to be,
and it is.
Well, tell your face then.
Look, it was more. It was more to prove.
Deadline day bomber tomorrow. Toss another bar.
I can still. I will always find holes in what the board does. But look, it is exciting, and of course we've not had the best start, and it's been really disappointing. But look, let's take baby steps. I think the first challenge is for Roberto De Zerbi to work out what 11 is actually his strongest. I think that he doesn't know that yet. I think that's quite evident. Let's allow this window to pass, see if we do any more business. As I said earlier, I wouldn't be surprised if we do actually bring in a striker. And that would be unheard of for the club. But all I will ask, Chris, is, are we short in a couple of positions? Is a yes or no? Are we short in a couple of positions? Are we short at right back? Are we short up top? Do we say this every single summer without fail?
Yes, so, but what I would say, Josh, is that when I walked from the stadium to the car after the Everton game, us staying up in the Premier League, I said on that day, if Spurs want to be ambitious and we want to, go to that next level and not be in that relegation scrap and all these problems again, we need 10 to 12 players in the transfer window. Some people, watch this channel on a regular basis. Some people agreed, and some people, it was a very mixed opinion. Some people said we're never ever going to sign 10 or 12 players in a transfer window. Spurs are never going to do that. They're never going to be that ambitious. Well, actually, we have. We've signed 8, and we're on the verge of signing 2 more, so that's 10. So that is exactly what I thought or hoped that Tottenham would do. The level of ambition of the football club has changed dramatically from when Daniel Levy was running things to now, at the football club, because the Lewis family don't want to be in that position ever again, and rightly so.
Sorry, Chris, just some news coming in here. Danzo Sunderland's a loan deal. It's not a permanent. Option they buy.
Option. Okay, good.
Option they buy.
Good.
Sammy Mockles got the first drop on that, so it's just come out there.
Sport,
Fantastic. Fantastic. That is fantastic news. That changes everything. It's a 9 out of 10.
But Josh, hold on, because there are a few people in the chat here saying, "What on earth have you got to be positive about?" Right? And whenever I'm positive about the football club, people love to knock it, because they have their own agendas and they want to be negative, or they want to feel. I don't ever tell people how to feel. If I feel positive, it don't mean that you have to. You can feel whatever you want. You two don't feel the same as what I do, but things have changed dramatically. And I tell you what, had we have won the opening 2 games, Josh, you were saying to me before the season started, you said that we'd be finishing in the top 4 and possibly could even win the league. And now we've lost the last.
I never said could win the league. I never said that.
You're
going too far there.
You were very, very positive. So
I said I can see a world. I could see a world in which we could finish second, but that's not what I think we're going to do. And the reason for saying that is because City are an unknown with Maresca, Liverpool an unknown with Iraola, Chelsea an unknown with Xabi Alonso.
Yep.
That was the reason. And because Spurs had spent. But look.
Right. So Spurs have lost their opening 2 Premier League games, right? Hull City have won their first 2 Premier League games. Are Hull City winning the Premier League?
Nope.
No. Are Spurs getting relegated because we've lost the last or the first 2? No. So we could still finish in a Champions League spot. Things could dramatically turn around, and De Zerbi will get these players playing. There's absolutely no doubt about that. It has been a good transfer window. So, when people say, "What are you being positive about?" there is a lot to be positive about. So don't be so great.
No, but Chris, no one here is sitting here saying...
Josh, I only remember as well, but the last time we had these big summer windows, if you remember, Juan de Ramos, bottom league after 8 games, sacked. Villas-Boas, 7 players, come in after Bale, sacked. So sometimes it doesn't always work out that way, Chris.
Well, Chris, I think you're conflating what we're saying with what people in the comments are saying, because neither of us have said we're going to get relegated. I've not said we're going to be in the relegation fight. I still think
we're short.
I still think we'll get a European place, but I don't like this sort of Jekyll and Hyde approach to everything, where it's either really, really bad or really, really good. I think it's
exactly. And that is what a lot of the fan base is. It's either everything is fantastic and we're winning the league, or everything is terrible and we're getting relegated. No one ever seems to be in between. And just some people just need to stay a little bit calmer sometimes.
Chris, I'm in between. I give it a 6 out of 10. I'm right in the middle.
And look, I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. And I genuinely believe this, because it is an 8 out of 10 in the context of where we have been and where we're trying to go. Is this window that we've had now, we're probably not looking at having another summer for a very long time where we're going to bring in 10 players plus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But there are a few things to say here, which is that, first of all, for every negative that we can point out, we can point to a positive, and the other way around. Because you can say we've spent all this money, but equally, transfer prices across the board have significantly gone up for all sorts of players. You're looking at Chelsea signing an 18-year-old for £40 million who hasn't proven himself. This is the market now. So first of all, the market has led to some of this, hence why we're spending 100 million, because 3-4 years ago, Tonali's not going for 100 million. But secondly, we've also, for the hundreds of millions that we've spent, and I think Gabby Agbonlahor needs to understand this, we've also sold hundreds of millions as well.
Yeah.
So it's not the case that Spurs have gone out and spent 400 million. And we've bought a lot of players in, that's great. But as Gareth pointed out, there's only a handful that have cost a lot of money, and the rest were different deals. Now,
like 10 players and 3 of them.
Are Spurs will be prepared in future transfer windows to spend the same amount of money, say £400 million, but that be on 4 world-class players? We're not at that point yet. We can't do that yet. Players of that quality are simply not going to come to Spurs unless we are playing in the Champions League and can prove something with this lot. It's a process. Arsenal, how long did it take Arsenal before they went out and spent 100+ million on Declan Rice? before they went and, their window was looking like 3 or 4 players in, but all 3 or 4 players were absolutely top draw. It's going to take time. That's why I'm saying contextually, this is very, very good.
Yeah.
And I do back De Zerbi, and I do agree with you. I think the team will get going. De Zerbi needs to know his best 11. He needs to work that out. We need to see what happens at the end of this window, see when the dust settles, who we've got in that squad, who that 25 man is. And then we can start looking at building on that. And I think over time, it's probably, as I said, we're probably not going to see the fruits of all of this until probably the second half of the season, where it's all kick into gear, because we've literally gone from, we've cleared out half the squad and we've replaced half the squad.
When you have that level of change as well, it does take time. And I know
it really says too, if Europa League qualification for next season would be, that would be acceptable to me. I think the manager should, that would be a big step forward for me, and I think I'd be happy with that. Champions League football next season isn't a complete must for me and my expectations. I still think if we're in Europa League next year, that will be a good season and a big step forward.
When you guys play FIFA or Championship Manager or Football Manager and you sign 10 players, do the players gel straight away on the Football Manager?
Right away. I click my fingers and boom.
That's it. That's it.
It's not real life. No, you're right though, Chris. It's not real life. And I think you can sit here and celebrate what has been a really good transfer window so far, but you can also ask serious questions at the same time over the decision to sign Mykhailo Mudryk on loan, who hasn't played for 2 years, and Tosin, who is aging, proven himself to be an absolute laughing stock at Chelsea. There's a reason why they called him one of the Chuckle Brothers, because he was a laughing stock there, and they couldn't wait. I mean, I live, as you know, and as I say all the time, I live with 2 Chelsea fans, and they're coming in. They're absolutely pissing themselves laughing at me when I come in the door, because we're taking their rubbish. And they couldn't believe they managed to ship them off to Spurs, because it's exactly that kind of signing, unfortunately, that is a PR disaster for us. And it's perfect for all the rival fans that like to take the piss out of us.
And because the Masters had it, Josh. Remember they used to do this to Arsenal with Raheem Sterling and players like that, just shift them to Arsenal and they would be awful. These Chelsea rejects never do anything for anybody. I can't remember the last.
And this is why, the last time we signed a player direct from Chelsea was Carlo Cudicini 17 years ago. Absolutely loved Cudicini, but times have changed, unfortunately. And my worry, whilst I'm delighted with what's happened, and I cannot wait to see what's to come from these new signings, I don't think Tonali is going to be as disappointing as he's been in the first 2 games. I think it'll eventually, it will click for him.
Yep.
And when we get that right 11, it will work. But that doesn't mean we can't sit here and question, where's the physicality in this team? Where are the goals coming from? What do we do about the right back situation if Porro gets injured? What do we do about the goalkeeping situation if Kinski continues to struggle with his performances? And where's the focal point in this side? And we can also ask questions, if we get injuries, what's going on there? I mean, the club have already taken steps to address that. I think what I find really funny is you come on the podcast and obviously we talk about all sorts of things, but you say one thing that is slightly negative, you get called negative, you get called all of this. You say one thing that's positive, you get called a happy clapper. And actually it's called having a bit of balance and a bit of nuance. And of course, emotions are a little bit heightened right now, because I think we've been stung again effectively in the transfer market. We've had another top quality player we thought we were getting through the door. Iliman Ndiaye is in the same league as the Tonalis, the Fernandezes, the Savios and the Marmouches, that player that, do you remember last time we were on, Chris, we were talking about who kids might want to get on the back of their shirt. And Ndiaye was another player that kids would want to get on the back of their shirt.
He was one of the players that we really wanted, Josh. I mean, you said at the start of the summer, like, that's why we're so downbeat too, because we both really wanted this player, Chris. Because
he's an absolutely fantastic footballer, and Tosin and Mudryk are not players that are going to get fans off their seat, and not. You've gone from the wow factor to, again, what feels like a very Tottenham problem, where in years gone by, here's that big shiny target that we want, and we end up with 3rd, 4th choice. And we haven't had that this summer. And this is the first time we're getting that. And it's like, okay, just a little bit of sprinkling of Spursy to throw in there when we thought we'd kind of shaken that this summer. And that's what is so infuriating about this, because we thought, oh my God, you get Njai through the line, you maybe find a right back. We are looking at a 10 out of 10 window.
Will has got a great comment here. How on earth do you end up living with Chelsea fans? I completely agree.
Do you know what? It's. I don't know if you have this as well, both of you, but I loads of Arsenal and Chelsea fans, but I kind of enjoy the banter and the rivalry within our friendship. It does play quite a big role.
Nah, I've nothing to do with them. Right, talking about Chelsea. So Sky Germany have just reported that Tottenham are working at full speed on a loan deal for Mudryk. Verbal agreement is in place, negotiations with Chelsea are ongoing, and a decision is expected on deadline day. Josh, what I was going to ask you, or what I was going to tell you about Vinay's statement, he was talking about our squad and the transfer window so far. He said, we have strengthened our men's squad with a clear focus on the quality, character and physical robustness needed to achieve our aims. We have attracted the names that we wanted to attract, adding players with proven Premier League experience alongside talent we believe can continue to develop and improve of us. It is a good mixture, isn't it, of experience.
Chris, Fabrizio Romano, breaking news. Here we go for Mudryk.
Okay, there we are. I was going to say, a good mixture, Josh.
Here we go as well.
Yeah. So there's 10 transfers in this window. So, you know, Vinay said here, a good mixture of Premier League experience and young talent. Also talking about player trading, he said successful clubs have to be decisive about both recruitment and sales, and selling well is critical in modern football. We have too often held on to players for too long. This summer, we have been more aggressive in selling players at what we believe is the right point, structuring deals to ensure we enjoy future upside as players achieve future milestones in their careers. Josh, what do you make of those comments from Vinay?
Yeah, I mean, he says all the right things, but let's see how things are on the pitch. I think I understand why you asked the question, and we can be very analytical and almost overanalyze every word said by everyone. Ultimately, what matters is the results on the pitch. And if we finish 17th again, then all of that means nothing. If we have a good season, which I do believe we will have, then it carries more weight. So let's see. I am impressed, to your early question, very impressed that all of our signings have Premier League experience. That is really, really good. I mean, is this the first time ever where we've signed? Well, first time certainly that I can remember where every single one of our signings is coming from a Premier League club. There's not a single one, is there, that's come from outside the Premier League, which is fantastic. And also explains why certain fees are higher. By the way, just on Tosin, that's going to be 7 million.
What?
So that's £7 million plus add-ons.
Is that what it is? I'm seeing Mudryk here too. There's an option to buy.
Option to buy, not mandatory. Yeah.
So are you going to promise now, if we have the option to buy and we buy him, you're going to get your name on the back for the next season?
No, because I'm not 10 years old.
Right. Let's talk about Mikey Moore, because it was announced today that he has joined Bundesliga side Cologne on loan for the remainder of the season. Josh, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, just
what have you made of Mikey's performances of late? And of course,
very, very, very good. And this is why I'm kind of a little bit baffled, to be honest, because Mikey Moore, is he ready to start week in, week out in the Premier League? No, I don't think he is. But given the choice of him or Mudryk, what would I have taken? I probably would have given him a punt. And I'd like to see now, with Mikey Moore going out on loan, you know, what a great performance against Charlton he had. It's going to be a great opportunity for him to develop, to grow. We know English players can do really well in the Bundesliga. So that's going to be fantastic for him. And I really just hope that he gets regular minutes, because Kota Takai didn't play enough. Was it Tanganga we sent out to Augsburg at one point, and he barely got a kick? So I just hope he gets regular minutes and is a regular starter for Cowlin. Maybe this frees up an opportunity for Luca Williams-Barnett to get some minutes as
Josh,
well.
when we were speaking on about a few Mondays ago about players that could leave on loan, and Chris asked me about where do you stand with, a lot of fans get annoyed when you have players coming through the system don't really get an opportunity. And this is where I think they get very angry, because if you're bringing in Njai and you've brought in Savio and you've brought in Marmoush, then Mikey Moore, reluctantly you have to send him out on loan. But now that you're bringing in Mudryk, they send Mikey Moore out on loan. People are weighing it up, going, well, maybe it would have been better just to give Mikey Moore a season to see how he gets on.
Yeah,
and we had this last year with Lancashire. We brought on Muyani, who didn't do anything for us. So, if you're bringing in top quality, no one's going to complain about the youth players going out and loan and getting more experience. But when you're bringing in rejects and options like this, that's, Tell's an hour player who's potentially holding Mikey Moore's Tottenham career back. I haven't seen enough from Tell to tell me that he's a better player than Mikey Moore in a year and a half. So I think Mikey Moore can consider himself very unlucky. And if I was Mikey Moore and I see Matisse Tell at Tottenham and I see Mudryk coming in on a loan, I'd be furious. I would be furious, to be honest.
To your point, Harry Kane was the last one that came through, was given regular minutes and stuck it out, right? And other clubs seem to be much better at this than we are. Look at Man United did it with Rashford all those years ago. City brought on this Mikaidu guy, did it with Cole Palmer. Other clubs seem to be far better at giving their youngsters a real opportunity. And for some reason, Spurs haven't been great at it since Harry Kane. And more disappointingly, it's a player that we know isn't performing and is not to the standard that any of the fans want to see, being picked week in, week out, to the detriment of the development of a player like Mikey Moore. And this is exactly why the Lancashire situation is quite frustrating, because you're looking at Richarlison and you're looking at Solanke, and we're not seeing enough from me. I don't know if I cut out then, but rightly, we're saying, well, why could Lancashire not have had a chance? Did I cut out then?
A little bit.
I would say, like more with Tell, the same thing applies to Lancashire with Richarlison and Solanke. When we know that they're not at the level I think people want to see, it does make you question that. So I think at that point, I think Gareth, you're spot on. I think fans would have probably liked to see Mikey Moore, and certainly would like to see Luca Williams-Barnett given an opportunity, rather than filling numbers with players that have an awful lot to prove. It's not Njai.
It makes no sense.
Gareth, in terms of the loan, is the Bundesliga the right place to send Mikey Moore for his own development?
I'm not so sure. I would have preferred him to have a Premier League loan, if possible. But I don't know what kind of interest was there, Chris. At the end, they would have been looking at this player, what he would have done for Rangers last year. There's a lot of Celtic and Rangers fans over in Ireland here, depending on what side you're living on. But, one thing that they're universal on at the minute, and a lot of Irish fans that watch the Scottish League, is it's a very poor standard at the minute. It's a very, very poor standard. I'm not sure where it ranks in terms of, would it be stronger than the Championship? I'm really not sure. At the minute, Scottish football is in turmoil in terms of, you look at their results in Europe. Celtic were beaten 5-4 after being 4-0 up. An Austrian team in Lask, who are more of a Europa League conference team than they are a Champions League team. They're in the Champions League this year, so maybe these clubs haven't seen enough of Mikey Moore in terms of Premier League appearances to maybe take a chance on him. So maybe it would have been Championship teams looking at him, and maybe the Spurs feel that going to play in the Bundesliga will be a better standard, so maybe he's going out there. But one thing that Josh probably watches about European football too. A lot of players that have had success in Germany recently and moved to England have struggled. So it's a very, very different league. We've seen it with Florian Wirtz. Xavi Simons didn't set the world alight when he came here. Benjamin Sesko's another one. So it can be a difficult transition from Germany to England. It's seen over the last few years. Timo Werner is obviously one that we know about. So, Matisse Tell, someone he's mentioned, another one. So I don't know how much stock we'll take from it if he's very successful out there. But the one thing that we really hope, and Josh is right, that he gets minutes. Let's hope he gets minutes. But if we had a lost out in Njai, the Man City, yes, it would have been tough. But I think is what made me and Josh probably more negative tonight is the player that's now we're going for Mudryk. I think I could have accepted it over time that we lost out on the player. We're going to give Mikey Moore an opportunity this year. It's not ideal in terms of we've lost out in Njai, but at least Mikey will get an opportunity now. I think it's just the wrong way to go about it now, doubling down and going with a Mudryk that could potentially block a pathway now for Mikey Moore. And let's be honest, Mudryk's as much of a gamble as Mikey Moore would be, if maybe even a bigger gamble, because he's had this long break from football. So, I'm a wee bit lost for words, Chris, tonight on this Mudryk situation. I really.
Can I just say on Mikey Moore?
And you're never lost for words.
I think it's frozen again.
Never.
Frozen.
Go on, Josh. What do you want to say?
Oh, my I don't know what connection's been dodgy. I was going to say the other thing that I'm a little bit surprised that he's gone to Cowlin of all teams, Mikey Moore, because having been the Young Scottish Player of the Year last season in the SPFL and having gotten minutes, in all three of Spurs' opening games this season, I'm really surprised that a club like a Hull or a Coventry or a lower end Premier League team has not taken that and said, I want to take a punt on this. And I'm also surprised that a top end promotion chasing championship club, a Millwall, for example, with them potentially losing Femi Aziz, a Southampton or a Middlesbrough, aren't looking at a player like Mikey Moore. And I would have much rather seen a player like that go to a top-end championship or lower-end Premier League club. And I'm a little bit surprised that that's not happened. And I would love to know, is that because that interest wasn't there? Or if it was there, did Spurs feel like they were getting going to get better development out of him in Germany? I think it's a really interesting question as to why a player like that hasn't had an opportunity that the club has deemed or either not had the opportunity at all.
Josh, I think we're at the stage now, but this is Mikey's last loan. I think if he doesn't get an opportunity next year, I think he's going to have to be sold because I just can't see him being loaned again. I really think this loan's got to be successful and then he's going to be integrated next year if he's ready, or you make a decision that, look, we're going to different. We just don't think he's going to be good enough for Spurs long term.
Then why send him to
because
Germany?
I just don't think we can keep loaning them.
Why send him to Germany? Send him to an English league where he's going to be dealing with the physicality, because I think that's everyone's question mark over Mikey Moore, right? Is can he deal with the physicality of first team football at the highest level in this country? I think we all know that technical ability is there and that's going to grow and develop, and hopefully he's going to get a bit of a killer instinct and learn to become quite prolific in front of goal too. But you're going to have the best chance of doing that by playing at a high-end championship or lower-end Premier League club.
I don't know. I think that'd be a good loan for him, Josh. And I know that Johan Langer has said many times before that, these development players and particularly players like Mikey Moore, they choose their clubs and their leagues very, very carefully. There's a lot of work that goes into this. It's not just they're interested. Yeah, okay, off you go. They do a lot of work and preparation for this as well. I know, Gareth, you've touched on this already, but Fabrizio Romano has given here 2 here we goes. Tosin to Tottenham, here we go. Deal agreed, also on personal terms. Understand Chelsea will receive £7 million fixed fee plus add-ons for the defender who is joining the Spurs project. confirmed. And also the other one, Mudryk to Tottenham. Here we go. Everything agreed. Also on personal terms, Mudryk joins Tottenham Hotspur on paid loan, and also understand there will be a buy option clause, not mandatory, in the agreement. The Ukrainian will rejoin Roberto De Zerbi. Next up, Gareth, we're going to talk about Papa Matar. Fabrizio Romano again. Juventus agreed deal to sign Sarr. He had his medical today in Italy. Here we go. Deal agreed between clubs. Tottenham on an initial loan, plus buy option clause to become mandatory under certain conditions. It's understood that if they qualify for the Champions League, total package worth 30 million euros fee for Spurs, and Sarr wanted Juventus. Deal done. What do you make of this one?
I think it's a great move for Pape. I think he's delighted to get a club like Juventus. I think it was pretty clear he wasn't going to be part of the plans here. Whilst I think when he moved here and he had that really good game, didn't he, in the San Siro, there was a lot of promise about him. He got a real opportunity under Ange. He was kind of starting role in that midfield with Bentancur and Madison. Or Basuma and Sarr and Madison was that midfield that had that great start to the season. I think he's regressed as a player in the last sort of 12 to 18 months. Whilst there is quality there, I think we've had this conversation. I'm not sure what his main strengths are as a player. He don't score enough goals. He's not really a creative player. He's not really a won the ball back, robust sort of tackler. That's why Pellegrini was brought on last year. I think he's just an all-round average Joe in midfield. I think he can do a job for you. He's got strong running ability. Obviously, with the videos going around today, everyone remembers Johnson's goal in Bilbao, but it was Sarr that got the assist for that. So he's a big part of the reason we won that cup. But I just don't think we've seen enough development from him and his game to be part of the future here. As I said, I don't know. He can't really play as a 6. He's been tried as a number 10 at times, hasn't really worked out. His best position is probably as an 8, and you've got Tonali, Fernandez on the team now, so it was never going to work. You've Bergville there. I think Bergville's got a higher ceiling than Sarr, whilst Bergville has to improve. I do think Bergville's got more quality there, and you could see him go on to be a more established player than Sarr in years to come. So I think it's the right time for Sarr to move. I think Juventus will be a good move for him. And listen, wish him all the best. He's always a player I think give 100% for the club.
Yeah.
So it's it's just the reality of football. Some players leave, and this is one of them. So good luck to him at Juventus.
We thought he was going to explode, didn't we? I think when we saw him come to the club, and we saw how brilliant he was in moments, that goal against Man United. There were some moments, even at the start of last season and under Ange as well. It felt like he was going to really blossom into this phenomenal, really, really powerful, dominant box-to-box midfielder that could drive the ball so well and create everything. And unfortunately, I think Gareth is spot on. His development hasn't quite, that trajectory is sort of plateaued a little bit. And, I would say that Sarr hasn't improved anywhere really of note in the last 2-3 seasons, which is a real shame because I think we all wanted it to work out for him. And I completely echo everything Gareth has said. What a great servant to the club whilst he's been here. Can't say a single bad thing really about him. Just unfortunately, we want to go places, and in many ways, Chris, you'll like hearing this because this matches the ambition of where the club wants to go and proves how ambitious the club and the board are trying to be. That unfortunately now, Fernandez has a higher ceiling. Tonali, we expect to be a better player. And Bergvall, I think at the age of 20, is a better footballer currently now than I think Sarr has ever been. And he's got a lot of development to go. So I think it was probably a decision between Bergvall and Sarr. That was probably the matchup that we were looking at here. And I think, unfortunately, if you're going to weigh them up, Bergvall does probably win in almost every metric, really. And Sarr's not a player you could expect playing for a bigger club than Spurs in the future. But I think Bergvall, if he can continue to develop, is one of those players that you look at. I mean, remember we were battling with Barcelona to sign Bergvall, and it wasn't quite the same situation for signing Papsar. So it's a real shame, but as Gareth says, it's unfortunately it's part of the nature of football, and I think I can see Papsar having a career a bit like Etienne Capoue, where and we Tottenham fans can say, oh, they didn't rate Etienne Capoue particularly highly, but no one can take away the career he had when he left Tottenham. He was absolutely revered by Watford fans, and went on to be a really solid Premier League midfielder. So, and I think Sarr's got a great career ahead of him still. Unfortunately, just not at Spurs.
So I meant to say too, Chris, I forgot about this when I was talking about players. Conor Gallagher as well is obviously there. So I think just we're overloaded in that area. And I think, Conor Gallagher coming in is probably one of the reasons that Sarr's moving on, is that we've got too many players. And that was, you think about it, Tonali, Fernandez, Bentancur, Conor Gallagher, Lucas Bergvall, and you had Papi Sarr. So there's a lot of players on there vying for positions, one game a week. I just think Sarr's options were going to be limited for game time.
They're all very similar, as you say, Gareth.
Yeah.
There's no real clear, and this to me still is an issue with Spurs in midfield, and why I mentioned the midfield three that we played against Newcastle, which was the exact midfield three I wanted us to play, and then we realised actually it didn't quite work out as we'd hoped. There's too much similarity between a lot of these midfield players. And I think a lot of Tottenham fans are looking at a player like Conor Gallagher and asking, what does he actually offer to the team other than, working really hard? No one can question his work rate and his commitment, but on the ball, what does he offer? And then you've got Tonali, Fernandez, Bentancur, as you rightly say, Bergvall, all quite similar players. And I do just get the sense with our midfield. And let's not forget Archie Gray as well. Archie Gray doesn't want to be a right back. I think we all would think that Archie Gray's future is in midfield. So you've got a lot of these players.
I'm glad you brought him up, Josh, because the Sun in the last couple of days have stated that there was a lot of interest, or there is a lot of interest in Archie Gray, particularly from Brentford, a club that he very nearly joined before he joined Spurs. And the report also states that he has stated that he doesn't want to play as a right back, like you've just mentioned. He wants to be a midfielder. What happens with Archie Gray? Because given the captain's armband for most of for pre-season, where does he fit in when we have a fully fit squad?
Well, I think this is exactly what I was going to go on to say. The question is perfect because this is our big thing, really, and this is something that I think we're all going to be asking a lot of questions of this season. Is of those midfielders, how many can you clearly define as number 10s? How many can you clearly define as number 8s? And how many can you clearly define as sort of number 6s, holding midfielders, right? We've got a lot of players that seem to be in a bit of a halfway house, right? Where you don't quite know whether they're a box-to-box. You don't know if they're a defensive midfielder, an enforcer, or whether they're more of a deep-lying playmaker, or whether they're more of an actual attacking midfielder. Of course, we can say Xavi Simons and Kulusevski perhaps are clear attacking midfielders. Even Maddison was a nailed-on number 10, but now he seems to be more of a deep-lying playmaker as an 8. So there's so many variables there. The one thing I would say about Archie Gray is he's one of the few players that I can clearly identify as a 6. I can clearly identify him as an enforcer as well as being good on the ball. So I would like to see Archie Gray's future as a holding midfielder who has proven that he can defend, but is also good at playing the ball out as well. So, but in this current setup with, Tonali, Fernandez, Bentancur, these types of players, do we play a flat 3? Do we play a 1 deeper and 2 box-to-box? Do we play 2 and an attacking midfielder in a 4-2-3-1? There's all sorts of different ways that we can cook it, which is no wonder De Zerbi doesn't yet know his strongest team. I think looking up to next summer, this is a really big season for Archie Gray. This is a really big season because either he's going to be turned into a right back full stop, and if he doesn't want that, then he's obviously not going to be very happy. And I don't think any of us want to see that. But where is his opportunities going to come in midfield? Because I think right now, as good as Archie Gray is, I don't think Archie Gray is in our strongest 11 by any stretch at all. So I think Archie Gray will probably be looking at this season as a really important one. And if he doesn't get that opportunity in midfield, and he does become second string in a fully fit squad, then he probably will want to leave the club. And you wouldn't blame him for wanting to do that. And I think the same thing probably applies to Bentancur. Bentancur is a player I absolutely adore, but he's probably one that next summer, I'd imagine, will be. In fact, it's funny because I think I said the same thing about Bentancur last summer, where I said, I think that this will be the next summer will be the one that he goes. But actually now, having seen Bentancur being a real core part of this team, I think now next summer will be the summer that Bentancur leaves the club. So we've got a lot of questions to answer. And I think our midfield, this is what is also slightly concerning with the dynamic of this squad currently, is the fact that we know we're short up top. We know we're short in terms of goals. And we know we're short probably in the goalkeeper positions as questions because Kinski's still got to prove himself. And we're very short at right back. But we do almost have this overinflated midfield. We do have far too many players of the same sort of similar ability, similar attributes, vying for very limited spaces. So it's no wonder that, Sar's the first to go, but I expect that there'll probably be one or two more that go either in January or in the summer.
Gareth, let's come to you on two players that have left on loan. Jamie Donnelly has joined League One side Luton Town on loan for the 26-27 campaign, having spent last term on loan at Stoke and Oxford. And of course, he had a very successful loan spell the season before at Leyton Orient. And Fabrizio Romano has also stated FC Porto have agreed a deal to sign Sousa from Tottenham. Here we go, loan move until June 2027. And perfect timing because Tottenham have literally just announced this now. Sousa has joined Portuguese club FC Porto on loan for the rest of this season. What do you make of these two moves?
I'll start with Donnelly, I suppose. It's a funny one with Donnelly because he's been involved in a few pre-season tours over the last few years, and he looks like a player, but like an Archie Gray, can play in a few different positions. Obviously, I've heard a lot more about Jamie because he's switched to his international allegiance to Northern Ireland, of course. So I've seen him play for Northern Ireland a few times now. The fans have took a real liking to him over here as well. So I think we're getting to the stage where Jamie Donnelly as well, a bit like Mikey Moore, that how many more loans can he go on now before we make a decision on him? Is he going to be a player that's going to be good enough for Spurs, or is he going to have to be sold? And again, he's another player I think that's not really been given an opportunity. He can play as a left back, and we've had problems at left back over the last couple of seasons, and he's been out on loan, so he's not been given an opportunity to go and play. We've had to play Jed Spence as a right-footed left back, because we've had so many problems there with Udogie being injured. So again, he may feel that he's not had a fair crack at the whip. Only the people on around the club that watch him a lot more than we do will be able to level him up in terms of maybe he just isn't good enough to play in the Premier League. I don't know. But from what I've seen him in pre-season, he looks pretty much like a tidy footballer. I know at Leyton Orient they had a brilliant loan. I know it's not the same level as Premier League football, but they were very happy with him there. So listen, I think this one
he went from a striker to a 10 to a 8 to a left back. And to what you're saying, it's really unfortunate, and you really do see the cruel side of football in a way, because we had a similar situation with Alfie Devine, we had a similar situation with Ashley Phillips, and now, of course, Will Lancashire as well. And it is what's really interesting, and I really want to get your thoughts on this because it just sparked my thoughts about. I'm going to name a really random footballer here, but Kiefer Moore. And the reason why I named Kiefer Moore, plays for Wrexham, and he's the perfect example of he plays for Wales, and he's a brilliant Championship striker. But there is that caliber of player that is too good for the Championship, but not good enough for the Premier League. And you also have that caliber of player that's too good for League One, but not quite good enough for the Championship as well. So, and with Donnelly, he seems to be like those other players in that bit of a halfway house where it's a real shame he's not had an opportunity, but there must be a reason for it. And he can't play in the under-23s anymore. So even the other day, Alfie Dorrington, he was playing for the under-23s, wasn't he?
21s.
Well, I mean, under-21s, there you go. And he was on loan where at Aberdeen, and then he went to Salford, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So we've got a few players like that where there's a lot of promise, but not quite enough yet. And I want to know why, or what's the difference between that and a Max Dowman that plays for Arsenal, or a JJ Gabriel, who's probably going to get a first team chance with Man United this season, or
Engamo at Liverpool.
Engamo at Liverpool, Heskey's son at Man City.
Well, Josh, if you are a youth team player, you would have seen, a good number of them went out to Australia and New Zealand, which was a great experience for them. And the way that Roberto De Zerbi, as I mentioned earlier, his man management with these youngsters is absolutely spot on. It's fantastic to see. But you're absolutely spot on what you said there. When do they get their opportunity? How do they get their opportunity? Because in recent years, the academy, under 18s, under 21s have won many trophies. They've done very, very well. They've been very, very successful. And you would have thought under the managers that we've had at the football club, they would have got the opportunities. If there's any time that they could have got an opportunity, it should have been in the last couple of years, but it hasn't happened. That is something at the football club that drastically needs to improve, doesn't it? Because fans love to see that as well, one of our own.
Yeah, massively. But the other thing that's really interesting, though, is the hypocrisy of us as fans, right? Because we say we want Luca Williams-Barnett to get an opportunity, right? And Luca Williams-Barnett, I think, is an outlier, right? It's very, very clear to see that his technical ability is far better than any of the names that we've just mentioned. And he is, just turned 17 now? And we can tell already, I think instantly we know his ceiling is far higher than any of the other players we've mentioned. But then when you go and play your, Oldham Athletics or your Gillinghams in the FA Cup third round, and then we play that team that features those kids, and then we go 1-0 down and we struggle, then the fans are calling for us to play a full-strength team.
Yeah, but it's not our fans or us that pick the team. So
no,
this is
it's the manager. So, but this is my point. Of course, it's the manager, but it's a difficult situation because as fans, we want to see these youngsters get an opportunity. But then often when they do get an opportunity, I think the managers may feel under a degree of pressure to, get over the line. And for a club like Spurs, the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup are hugely important competitions for us, especially with no Europe. That becomes amplified. When you're in Europe, you can kind of wave goodbye to the Carabao Cup, not really care about that. And I think fans, given a choice of an FA Cup or a Carabao Cup, I think everyone's going to say we want to win the FA Cup. Now that we're out of Europe, that opportunity is even slimmer. And so that is a really, really difficult, unless you are that good that you're going to get your chance. And this is why I'm very, very excited about Luca Williams-Barnett, because he has been in the matchday squad. He could have been sent out on loan, but the decision is being made to keep him in and around this first team. And I really hope he does get his opportunity. And that's why I say, clearly he is at a higher level. And this is where I think ultimately as well, as fans, we can be a little bit too sentimental and emotional when it comes to these players, the one of our own tag, because we all saw what happened with Harry and it was the most incredible thing. It was certainly the best ever Spurs player in my lifetime. And people are talking about Harry Kane in the same conversations as your Glenn Hoddles and your Jimmy Greaves, and rightly so. But how many of them actually end up like that? And then you also look at your rival clubs and you see, okay, Bukayo Saka, absolutely stand out for Arsenal. He's one of their own. And you've seen Cole Palmer, who was one of City's, go to Chelsea and become a huge player. But unfortunately, Spurs, whilst we produce some great players that can win and win trophies at youth level, that's not translated into men's first team football. And so, Tyrese Hall's another one who looked really bright, and he had a very good loan at Notts County, but it's not, that opportunity is not going to be there in the first team. Same thing happened with Japhet Tanganga. Everything looked incredible when Tanganga came through. We thought, oh my God, we've got the next Ledley King. He was man of the match against Liverpool, and then look at how his career has gone since. And now he's, captain of Sheffield United in the Championship, but he is a Championship footballer. So it shows just how hard it is to get to that top level and make it work. And as fans, I think rather than the individual, we would just love to see one or two of those kids make it and be at that level.
I think there'll be a lot more loans for a lot more development players on the final day of transfer deadline day. Gareth, one thing that we did miss out earlier, Josh did ask you a question about who's realistic in the centre forward department signing for Spurs in the final. What are we in now? We're 23 hours, 45 left of the transfer market. So who's realistic if Spurs were to bring in a number 9?
I think anything's realistic at the moment when you bring Mudryk in. I mean, it could be anyone. I mean, I think we're shown we're capable of doing anything. I've just seen that the Mudryk option they buy is for 75 million, which is crazy as well. I mean, I just can't see that ever being activated. But striker-wise, I think it's going to be difficult to go and get a top striker. Who's going to want to lose anyone of value? Realistically, deadline day, you might get the odd big move, the very odd time, but most of these big moves that happen on deadline days is because the talks have been going on and going on and going on for months and months and months. It's rare you see a new big deal just sort of become under the news on deadline day and then get done. So I don't see a world in where we go and sign somebody's number 9. I think if we're going to bring in a striker, it's going to be, unfortunately, another Mudryk situation where it's probably somebody that's needing a move. I mean, listen, Walter, I think there'll be movement we have with him tomorrow. Not saying I want him. He wouldn't be somebody that I would want, but, I think he'll probably leave Newcastle. There'll be probably a couple of teams in for him.
He's going to Juventus.
Well, Juventus, but I think that's what you're looking at tomorrow. Opportunities. I don't see it being somebody where we go and splash 70 or 80 million. I would love to be wrong, Chris, but I think if we do bring somebody in, it's going to be somebody of a loan nature, or somebody like Tosin, where it's for peanuts, 7 million. When do you ever see players going for 7 million anymore? No, that's realistically where we're going to be looking at tomorrow. So, I would love to get another here we go tomorrow, but I really hope it's a good one. I don't want to see any more of this today. And look, I'll apologize. I haven't been in the best form tonight, but
I'm used to it.
It's just all this very fresh before we come on air, and I think I just had such high hopes for the last couple of days of the window, and not anymore now. I'm a bit disappointed.
Hold on, we're not finished yet. A few more questions yet. I'll tell you what, De Zerbi said it's a crazy transfer market. £75 million buy option for Mudryk. That is crazy. 75 million. Savio, Marmoush, Fernandez, Tonali, Van Hecke, Senesi, Robertson, Dubravka, and now we've got two here we goes, Tosin and Mudryk. So it does look like Spurs will get 10 players in this summer transfer window. Final couple of questions for you both. Gareth, let's start with you. How many more? How many more? How many more should there be? How many more do you hope for? What's realistic?
Well, I think Josh made a huge point earlier on. I'm not convinced that we're strong enough as fullback, especially on the right side. I think, Udogie's had a lot of injury problems, but with him and Robertson there, only one game a week, you can't. And our left back's not going to. That's not going to be something that the club's looking at. right back situation, I agree with Josh. Archie Gray is not a right back from what I've seen, and I've just seen in the last few minutes that Spurs have been approached by somebody. Now they haven't named the club, but Tom Barclays, who's been pretty solid for information this summer, says that there's teams looking at that. So
Yep.
I think only we're so short. Archie, he'll stay, but I think next summer there's going to be a real talking point about him, because if he's not going to be deemed good enough to play in midfield, I don't see him staying to be, a bit of a spare part in terms of, well, you can play it right back when we're short, play it left back when we're short, play it centre back when we're short. I don't think Archie will want to go down that route. So right back's a problem. If Pedro Porro gets injured, what I would say is Pedro's one of the more reliable players, always tends to be fit. And I've said it all night. Number 9 is a huge issue for me now. I don't see Marmoush as a striker. So it would have made more sense to me, Chris, tonight if we had been. Not that I would have been any happier with a lone striker coming on, but I could understood it a bit more, because we could have said, right, well, Marmoush, we can shift him to the left, and that makes up for missing out in Njai, and then go and look for a striker. But the fact that we've brought Mudryk in now tells me that there isn't going to be a striker coming on, because they've got Marmoush. He's seen as a striker. You've got Solanke, and according to Jacob Steinberg, Richarlison's not leaving anymore now. He's going to be staying put. So I think with 3 number 9s for one game a week, I just don't see a world in where we bring our striker in. Listen, crazy things can happen on deadline day, but I think we're finished after these 2 players. I don't see any more movement.
What about players leaving on deadline day, Gareth? Who can you see leaving?
Just potentially now Danzo. Do you mean anybody that's not in the news? Danzo's move will get confirmed tomorrow.
Anyone perhaps we've not spoken about tonight?
I don't see any more senior players moving out the door. I think Sarr will complete his move. Danzo will complete his move. We spoke about Sousa. I think that's a good loan for him going to Porto, big club in Portugal. And I think from what I've seen of Sousa last year when he played the odd game, they look decent. It looks like there's something there with him. So be interesting to see how he gets on with Porto. No, I don't see any more departures now. But you never know with Spurs, Chris. I mean, I didn't think Danzo would be going today. I really didn't. I didn't think there'd be any value in letting him go. But of course, we went and got Tosin. And that's the worry now, Chris. We've got to be very careful. If we were to let somebody go, we have to make sure we're bringing in somebody better. And I don't necessarily think we've got that with Tosin and Danzo. Mudryk's going to be a massive talking point now in the news tomorrow. There's going to be not all fans are on social media, Chris, and sometimes you have to be careful what you read, but there is a real negative reaction to this Mudryk situation tonight. There's not a lot of fans that are happy. They don't see, because they've seen this story before with our players. We've seen Chelsea do this before to other teams where they've sold off their crap and they haven't done anything for them. So
it's really split. It's really split. It's majority, I'd say, negative that I'm reading. But also then you've got the other ones that are either being contrary for the sake of it, to be an outlier, or they genuinely believe that.
I haven't laughed all night, Josh, but I did just laugh. I think it was George Bannon on Twitter. He says the only good thing about this Mudryk thing is Rebrov might do the announcement video. We haven't seen him for a while.
Yeah, quite. Absolutely. Kota Takai, I think he's expected to complete his move to Belgium, to St. Troiden, or whatever they're called. They've got Japanese owners. So we know how that ends up. Kota Takai will never play for the Tottenham first team. I think that was a weird signing in the first place. I think the last time we sent Alfie Devine to Belgium as well, and he's ended up moving to Preston permanently.
One player to keep an eye on tomorrow, I suppose, Julian Alvarez. He wants to leave, doesn't he? Yeah. Can we do a deal? I don't think so. No. But if we do a deal for him, I'll be in great form tomorrow night. I'll be in great form.
It's going to be Arsenal. If he goes anywhere, it's going to be Arsenal, or it's going to be Al Hilal. That's going to be really interesting to watch. I think keep an eye on Mateta. Keep an eye on Brian Brobby.
Sorry, Josh. Do you think we will bring an R striker on? Or do you think we'll have
I would say genuinely, I think it's 50-50. Because remember that money was there for Iliman and Jai. There was 6
Can you see them bring in a striker and not being able to shift up before number 9s? for one game a week.
Yeah. So what I would say is keep an eye out for Richarlison's situation. Keep an eye out for the striker situation, because things can change. Saudi could make a bid for Richarlison.
Sorry, Chris. When does Turkey close their window? Because I know he's got interest. Are they
I think
tomorrow?
there's later.
Yeah, it's normally a week later. I'll have a look.
So maybe if we do bring somebody in tomorrow, there is a chance he can move next week. But they would need to have good word of that, because surely we'd be
Friday
registration problems as well, Josh, if we had 4 strikers.
Yeah, so Friday for Turkey and Portugal, and Saudi I think is for another week or two. Just one thing though is Marmoush, I think if we bring in a striker, then doesn't play striker, he plays 10 or out wide.
But what would be the value of bringing Mudryk in then? That's what makes me think that's us done. I think Mudryk's the left winger and Marmoush is a striker.
Because look, I think I agree with you, but I think if the right opportunity presents itself, then that's Spurs will want to.
But that wasn't. But these opportunities today are not good opportunities. This is what I'm saying. I don't want to see any more crap coming.
No, they're not. No, they're not.
I do not want to see any more Chelsea rejects or
somebody
else.
I completely agree, and thank God we're not signing Robert Sanchez as well. But he's off to Como, and there are reports this evening that Como are looking at Brian Brobby actually. So Brian Brobby is one to watch. I think Mateta's situation is really interesting. Although he is injured, it is an interesting.
I don't know if he will be a good signing either. I'll be.
Look, I think it's not about whether it's a good signing. The question you asked is, do you think we'll sign a striker? And I think it's a 50-50. I
think if you're announcing a triple deadline day swoop of Mateta, Mudryk, and Tosin, I mean,
Mateta's far better than the other two. That's for sure.
I know, but he's getting older, and he didn't have a great end of last season.
Gareth, do you trust the manager?
Yes, I do.
Definitely.
Yes. Now, I was 100%. I still am. I'm 100% behind him, 100%. But some of his decisions in the last couple of weeks have definitely knocked a bit of my confidence. But yes, still think we have to support him long term and give him what he wants. And if he works magic with this Mudryk thing, then you'll have to give him his dues, because there's not a lot of people out there that can see this working. So,
Josh, one player that we haven't really covered, and this will be the last question. Gareth and I, on these weekly shows, we normally talk about all of the transfer activity. We haven't really spoken about the signing of Omar Mamouche. This was done. He trained on Friday, made his debut on Saturday. What do you make of the signing of Mamouche? What do you think he's going to bring to Spurs? Do you think he's going to be a success, a fan's favourite?
He's class. He's absolutely class. I think he really struggled as a lone striker. And I've said this on our WhatsApp chat so many times. For me, he cannot play as a lone number 9. That's not what he's good at. What he was brilliant at was picking up the ball deep and driving, and some of the things, when he ran on the ball, my goodness. And I think we'd have definitely seen a different result from the free kick had Marmoush taken it instead of Matisse Tell. Not saying that he would have scored it, but I definitely don't think it would have been ballooning into the stands the way that did. Look, I think he had actually a pretty good debut. I don't think he had a lot at all. I think we should have got him on the ball far more than we did. And I think that's more a team setup problem and midfield problem than it was Marmoush. Because every time Marmoush was on the ball, I thought he looked unbelievably good. I mean, there was that one run he did where he skinned about 3 or 4 players. That was just sensational. So, look, there's no doubting Marmoush's quality. I think he's going to be a real hit for Spurs. Really, really excited by that. And I cannot wait to see him play with Savinho, or Savio, as we call him now. But for me, as I said, you asked about that front three. I'd like to see Matisse Tell not start. I would go Marmoush on the left, Savio on the right, and Solanke up top from the start against Nottingham Forest. And I would also potentially start Kudus as well. I think we've got to try something different against Forest. But I think, for me, just with the way that Marmoush is good at dribbling, and we know he can bend a shot. I mean, look at the free kicks he scored in his career. I can see, and a lot of people have different ideas of what Marmoush can do. With the pace he's got and the ability on the ball, I could just see some of those Son-like moments if he was to play on the left. When Son used to run down and cut inside and bend one top corner, it's exactly the kind of thing I'd like to see from Marmoush.
Do you think something might happen with Tell tomorrow? I mean, that was it was a really difficult game for him on Saturday, and I think it's going to, I haven't seen, you think about Kianski's performance and the Atletico, that was a long way back, but I kind of felt that the ground swallowed Tell up with that free kick on Saturday. He had such a bad game up until that, and then the free kick just compounded his misery. He looked distraught when he was coming off. And I just wonder now with Mudryk coming in, maybe if there's an opportunity to move Tell on tomorrow and bring another player in, maybe that's something we could look at. I do not know, because I am looking at Tell now and I'm thinking this is never going to work out at Tottenham.
Yeah.
I think he needs to move on.
Well, this is kind of why I say 50-50, because I think you're exactly spot on. I think the way that he was hooked. Let's not make any mistake about it. After that free kick, he was already about to get hooked for how poorly he'd performed. And then that free kick was the sort of the icing on the cake, really. And you could see the way he came off. I mean, he was obviously distraught and he played terribly. And what really frustrates me with Tell is there is such a good player there, such a good footballer there. But for whatever reason, he's like Tottenham's answer to Noni Madueke. When it comes to the final pass, the final decision, he doesn't know what to do with it and he panics. And there are some moments there where I thought, yeah, this is brilliant. And other moments where it couldn't be further from. He tries so hard. He works so hard. I would like to think, I don't think we'll sanction a permanent sale for him tomorrow, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was a loan opportunity for Matisse Tell tomorrow. I think Roberto De Zerbi and the club would probably consider that. And I think, to be honest, I think a season-long loan for Matisse Tell could be a really good thing for him, because either it's going to make him or break him. And I think if Matisse Tell can go on loan somewhere and really tear it up and kind of prove himself, and I think more than prove his ability to the fans, prove the ability to himself, because he seems so shot of confidence. I think that is a very different proposition looking at Matisse Tell next season if he has a really good loan. So I think with Mudryk coming in, as I said, I'm not saying this as someone that has information. I'm saying this is I can see with how the club has been operating. It wouldn't surprise me if Tell did get a loan tomorrow. And I think that situation plays itself to a 50-50 as to whether we go for a striker too.
So we started the show this evening with Gareth giving the window a 6 out of 10. Josh, you gave it an 8 out of 10. With the developments during the show, and now we're at the end of it, with Tosin and Mudryk coming in. Gareth, have you got a revised figure?
No, I based it on those two. So okay. 6 out of 10. I can't give it any more than that, honestly. I'm so disappointed with the second half of the window. I know we did some good bits earlier in the window, but I think since July it's been such a letdown. Savio and Marmoush, yes, I've definitely picked that up, but they end up with these two players, and as Josh says, his Chelsea friends are laughing at him. And listen, on social media tonight we are being laughed at. Same old Tottenham, as they say. So no, there's nothing positive about these two players coming in my opinion. So 6 for me and no more. If we can do something special tomorrow, I'll revise my rating. But as of now, it's just an average window.
Josh, still an 8, and it's time for you to move out, I think.
Yeah, still an 8. No, still an 8 for sure. Again, that was considering this. I may have scored it an 8.5 or a 9 before this. It would have been a 10 if Njai had come in. But again, there are still big question marks. I mean, seeing Daniel Munoz go to Nottingham Forest for just over £20 million, I mean, that's an absolute steal. For less than what we sold Jed Spence for, we could have had a very, very competent right back challenging Pedro Porro there. I still think there's some business to be done. We are absolutely still short in a couple of key positions. But I think ultimately this decision is going to come down to what Roberto De Zerbi sees in these players, which is why, I keep saying he needs to work out his best 11, and he needs to work it out really, really fast, because, decisions are going to be made as to whether Marmoush is a striker, whether he's not, whether Gray's a right back, whether he's not. And there are going to be consequences to all of these decisions. And ultimately, as Gareth said, this is all on Roberto De Zerbi. This is entirely on Roberto De Zerbi if this experiment doesn't work. If all this money is spent and his decision-making is, okay, Marmoush is the striker, Gray's a right back, and it doesn't work out, that is on him, because that is solely...
Josh, at what point do you think it becomes a precarious situation for the manager? Because I've said there Halloween. Where would you think?
I'm not even going to answer that. I think it's you're going for a nibble right now, and we've got to get behind him.
No, I'm not saying. I'm just saying, as in, results. When the results become imperative here, that's what I mean.
Results are imperative always. We've got to get a result at Forest. We've absolutely got to get a result at Forest. And if not Forest, we absolutely have to get a result against Everton. We should be going for 3 points every single game. But, we cannot allow ourselves to get into a rut. We cannot allow ourselves to go in, we finished the last 7 games incredibly strongly. We cannot allow ourselves to go 7 games into the Premier League season not winning a game. So I do think for the first half of the season, we're probably looking at a situation where for every 2 games we lose, we may draw 2 and win 2. That's kind of where I think we're probably going to be at the moment. And then looking for things to solidify in the second half of the season and win a lot more games than not. And I think, it probably will be a little bit win, draw, lose, win, draw, lose. But all you need to do, and if we're going to judge the league table based on previous couple of seasons, especially last season, you only need to go on a run of 7-8 games to, unbeaten. And look at how poorly Villa started last season. Then they went 12 unbeaten and were being talked about as possible title contenders.
Listen, it wouldn't be a complete disaster for me if we were to lose the next 3 games. I would still be behind the manager. I would still want to give him time after the international break. But I'm saying for some fans, I don't think it will.
Yeah, we'll forget some fans. This is where the mentality needs to change. We need to consider, losing is not an option for Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. This is what needs to change at the football club. The whole attitude, the whole mentality. I completely get it. Last question. Don't go there, Gareth. It's such a negative question.
This is not a case of Thomas Frank Stones. I'll tell you now.
Come on. We're meant to be happy after a really good transfer window, and when these players bed in and when De Zerbi gets them playing his style, I think it's going to be very, very exciting. And I think that Spurs are going to be a side that everyone is going to talk about and everyone's going to watch on TV as a neutral. So I'm excited about this season. I know it hasn't got off to a good start at all, but I think when De Zerbi gets these players going, then it'll be good. Very, very last question, very quickly. Where are we finishing after 10 signings? Where are we finishing?
I just knew that question was going to come. I knew that was the last question. Josh, go ahead.
Josh told me the other day that we could go second. Josh, you did get excited at one point and said we could even win the league. You did say that. He does.
Many drinks did he have with that? Many drinks.
But Josh does. Josh does get very excited when we win a few games.
Yeah,
Look,
that was at the Charlton game. I bet you can't play Charlton every week.
I said that I can see a world in which we finish second, given the question marks around other teams. This was before a ball was kicked. Having seen 2 games now, Chelsea are miles above us. United are miles above us. City are miles above us. Liverpool, big question mark. Look, Chris, I'm going to give you the most Chris Cowlin answer I can possibly give you. Considerably better than last season, and I'll leave it at that.
Now we need a number.
Well,
I think I agree with Josh, and I agree with Josh and you.
I'm gonna say 6th.
I agree with you too. I think second half of the season we're going to pick up a lot more points than we do in the first half, but it's how far we're behind is going to be the issue. I think, depending on how quickly this, how the players can get on the, on the physical condition. Now, like Forest is going to be a really difficult game at the weekend. So,
right now, Europa League.
I'm thinking
Gareth, we're 6 points behind Hull City right now. Are we finishing above Hull City?
Oh, we'll finish above Hull. I think.
Right, at last, we've got a positive out of him.
It might be a similar. I think was it Pochettino at Chelsea in that season? They finished 6th, but they were like 12th for a long time, and then they finished the season strong. I think we're going to be one of those teams that possibly is challenging for European position, finishing the season strong, and will we sneak on the Europa League, Conference League? It just depends how quickly we can get going over the next few weeks. I think if we can get going after this international break, we'll be fine. But if it takes a little bit longer, we could end up having to play a lot of catch-up, Chris. That could be the issue.
Do you remember the season at Chelsea?
Well, he needs to win a game. I mean, if he hasn't won a game by Halloween, he won't be here. That's fair enough.
Do you remember Poch's season at Chelsea when they ended up finishing the season really strongly and getting back into Europe before they brought Maresca in? Just before they brought
Maresca. That's what I'm saying. That type of season.
Exactly that kind of season. That's exactly why I say it's going to be win a game, lose a game, draw a game. Maybe win 2 or 3 in a row, then lose a couple in a row. It's going to be a bit unpredictable, but I completely agree. It's going to be second half of the season. We expect a much stronger season. I think we'll play Thursday night football next season.
Chris, I think them two.
Right now,
Forest has got obviously the next game, so it's a big game. But I think those 2 home games before the international break are going to be crucial. I think we're going to have to get results in those just for some sort of positivity. I think if we were to lose the next 2 at home, that would be a bit tough on the fans. I think we need to, not that Forest isn't important. I think, Forest away in any season's a losable game. They're strong at home. We've seen them go to Liverpool and they put on a really good performance at the weekend. That is going to be a difficult game. But I think those 2 home games against Everton and Villa have obviously had a difficult start to the season as well. I think those are 2 games where we need to pick up points. They give a little bit of hope going on the international break, because it's a long international break, Chris. Remember, it's 4 weeks this one, so you wouldn't want to be sitting on that after a couple of bad defeats at home.
If Spurs go into that international break without a win, it's going to be a very long and dark international break. However, if Spurs go and win the next 3 games,
exactly,
we're in the Champions League race. And so I think probably what will happen is we'll probably draw at Forest, and I would like to think that we can beat Everton and beat Aston Villa at home.
Take out now 7 points.
7 points out of 5 games, 2 wins, 2 defeats, and a draw. That's probably where I expect us to be right now. That's probably where I expect. Look, the other thing that I would say is if you match up every result, and this is something I like to try and do to keep positive when I get particularly negative, which is quite a lot. I like to marry up results from last season to this season. So I think, okay, Forest away, we lost 3-0 last season. So if we draw there or we win there, that's an improvement on last season. Then Everton at home, we beat them 1-0. Okay, can we beat them by more than 1 goal this time? Aston Villa, what was the score there? We didn't beat them.
We beat us 2-1 because I was at the game.
2-1, right? Okay, so if we draw or win that, it's an improvement on that. And although that's not the mentality we should have, I think right now, whilst things are very unsettled and very, very...
What did you tell yourself after Brentford, though?
Yeah. Well, I was deeply disappointed, but looking at that lineup, I wasn't surprised. Yeah. So look, I think it could be really tough going into the international break, but there is 3 really tough but good games, because I think the truth is, whether we like it or not, we're probably wanting to be we're probably in that conversation with your Leedses, your Evertons, your Aston Villas, and your Forests right now. That's probably where Spurs are right now. Until we can prove otherwise, that we're above that, we're probably in that conversation with the Brightons, the Villas.
The issue being, Josh, none of them teams spent 400 million, so there's a different expectation on the manager. I think if he doesn't get European football, I don't think he's in the job next year. I don't think the board would deem that as an acceptable level.
I agree.
What you think that what you think the club will pull the plug and have yet another manager? So it'll be 8 managers in 8 years.
I think if he finishes, bearing in mind, I think he can finish 8th and get into Europe, of some sort of Europe. So if he was to finish 9th or 10th or below that after spending that money, I think the board would consider it an underachievement.
I think the board will keep him if he gets Conference League as well.
Well, so you think Gareth, you're going to spend all that money, and then the first season don't work out, and then you're going to have to change everything again, and then play a new system, a new manager.
Liverpool spent 400 million on Arne Slot after winning the Champions League and sacked him. It does happen.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And also, look at
the league. He kept he won the league title.
At some point, the football club, Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, need to stick to something and go with it as a long-term project. You can't keep making these rash decisions like this.
But this depends on what the board's expectation are, right? And this goes back to Vinay and his cute little speech or whatever he did, right? His little statement, right? If the club expects this, where's the club's vision right now? Where's the board's realism right now? Do they think that finishing in a Champions League spot is genuinely realistic right now? Do they think that is what has happened this window is enough? Do they think that signing Tosin and Mudryk on deadline day, when we've seen a £60 million move for one of the brightest talents in the Premier League fall through, is acceptable to get Champions League football? Do they think that having one fit right back is acceptable for getting Champions League football? So,
I don't think he needs to get Champions League football. I think he needs to get any sort of European football. You look at the teams that are in Europe this year: Sunderland, Crystal Palace, Bournemouth.
100%. I agree with you. But what's the board's expectation? Is the board's expectation Champions League football because they're thinking about this? Or is it any form of European football? Or is it finishing top half because it's progress, because it's not being in a relegation fight? So it would be really interesting to see with what the board's real expectations are behind the sort of the public PR exercise.
It needs to be a realistic one.
It needs to be realistic, and the fans need to be realistic.
Top 7 or 8 for me is realistic.
I think so too.
I don't think you can get away with finishing any lower than that after spending this kind of money. And a lot of these teams that are in Europe this year have never played in Europe before, so they're going to struggle to compete Thursday, Sunday. Spurs don't have that. One game a week for a team that's got as much quality through the door as Spurs now really should be finishing in the top 7 or 8.
Gareth,
Europa League, by the way, if Spurs do get Europa League football, which I think
that'd be a good season.
If that is the aim, right? And of course, let's try and do better. But if we do end up with Europa League football, the board cannot be annoyed at that, because
that'd be a good season.
If we're in Europa League next year, right, we'll be on this exact same podcast a year today, and we'll be thinking, I can't wait. We won it the last time we were in it. Let's go and win it again.
Then natural progression then is they go again and then try and finish in the Champions League spots. That would be the natural.
Gareth, an interesting thing that you and I both picked up on a couple of weeks ago, of there's 9 brand new managers out of the 20 Premier League teams this season. So, and a lot of teams are in transition, a lot of players going out the door, a lot of new ones coming in. It's not only Tottenham that are in the transition.
I get that, but there's also 11 teams out of 20 in Europe. So we should have an advantage based on we're not playing as many games. So I think it would be inexcusable for Spurs to be going 2 seasons on the bounce without European football.
Yeah. Right, that's the end of today's show. We're almost at
3
transfer
hours.
deadline day. Yes, Gareth, thanks so much for joining us again. This is the longest show we've ever done, talking about transfers, isn't it?
I think that's the longest I've ever been negative for too, actually. So
I'm not sure about that.
no, listen, it's you've caught me on a bad day, Chris. I think with all this stuff that's come out tonight.
No, people said you were negative last week and the week before.
Did they? They'll think I was positive now. But listen, look, I really hope to be proven wrong. I would love to be proven wrong. I would love to see a big name come through the door tomorrow, or somebody that gets us excited. And Mudryk's just on there as a bit of a stopgap. But at the minute, I'm just a little bit concerned. It's not been a great start to the season as well, which hasn't helped. But listen, there's a long way to go. And I'm still very much behind this manager. I still think he'll turn it around, and I think he'll get the best out of a lot of the players he's brought through the door. So I do think as the season goes on, we're going to get better. But I do stress that things need to turn around quickly.
Yeah.
There's no time in football anymore.
Yeah. Gareth, thanks so much. Where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on that handle underneath there. I don't know if are we doing anything tomorrow, Chris? I'm not sure. I suppose I'll be in touch with you tomorrow, but it is deadline day, so there probably will be stuff happening. Good to see Josh. I haven't seen Josh for a while, so it was good to bring him on here.
Yeah. Josh, always great to see you. Thanks so much for coming on. And where can people find you?
Seems to be a common theme when I'm on podcasts that it goes on for an absolute eternity.
You two talk a lot. That's why.
At least it wasn't a 45-minute monologue on transfers this time.
Yeah.
Believe me, I could have done that. At Josh Hughes TV, the handle below. Again, see what's going on tomorrow and be in touch. Let's hope that I'm right about potentially a striker coming in and something. It can't finish like this, surely.
It can. No. Well, that's 8 transfers over the line. 2 here we goes. Let's see what happens on transfer deadline day. Just under 24 hours to go now. It has been a very busy period for Tottenham. Lots of outgoings as well. But yeah, keep up to date with all of the news on this channel on transfer deadline day. As Gareth said, there'll be a lot happening on the channel throughout. Thank you so much to the nearly 20,000 of you that have watched this stream this evening with myself, Gareth and Josh. And thanks so much for your time, Gareth and Josh, this evening. And thanks so much for watching, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. And keep smiling. Up the Spurs and stay positive.